Pirate's Most Powerful Villain, Chapter 941-960. Chapter 0941 _ Super Saiyan. Then it was released from his palm and turned into ashes. And Qin Yang was just waiting for this moment. When Nabal was painfully corroded by the shock wave, a door opened from time and space appeared so miraculously. Nabal opened his eyes and thought he had come to the underworld. It was not until someone appeared that Nabal realized that he was lucky to have come to a certain place. Qin Yang looked at him expressionlessly, and at the same time Nabal was staring at this strange man who was small for him. "Who are you?" "My name is Qin." "Oh, did you teleport me here?" Nabal thought, if he hadn't been seriously injured, he would have asked this guy in a different tone. However, although he is huge, he is not so stupid. He knows that this stranger who calls himself Qin is still a bit powerful. In this regard, Qin Yang has nothing to hide, and directly said to Gate of Opening, "I can cure you, and there are ways to make you stronger. I wonder if you are interested." When Nabal heard this, he laughed out loud by himself. Is there really such a good thing in the world? Tianheng dropped the pie, but according to his current situation, there is no other choice. Nabal said, "Okay, but if you want to play some tricks, I still have some strength." What he said was nothing more than to frighten Qin Yang, and Qin Yang could of course see that he didn't say anything after humming. He walked up to Nabas and said, "But you need to cooperate with me." Naba raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh, how to cooperate?" "That's it." Suddenly Qin Yang put his hand on top of Nabal's bald head. Nabas felt a burst of anger, but he dismissed the idea immediately, for a sudden feeling of comfort spread throughout his body. Before long, he stood up and found that the wound on his body was healed in an instant. "Do you have healing superpowers?" Naba raised his stalwart figure and bowed his head to Qin Yang. "It can be explained like this, I will make you stronger than you are now." But before Qin Yang could act, Nabal suddenly took a step back and said, "Wait, you mean I'm not strong enough now? Is that right?" Hearing this answer, Qin Yang was stunned for a moment, and then he understood. It turned out that the arrogant and aggressive nature of the Saiyans has come to dominate the personality again. This problem is real, and he will not do this every time he contacts a Saiyan in the future. Bar. Qin Yang said, "I see, you have to try your own abilities, okay, come on." Nabal showed an evil smile and said, "After all, you saved me, but it would be too heartless for me to deal with you with all my strength. Besides, being weak is not your instigation, so I won't use you to stab you. Well, I will let you go. 2 feet, as long as I move a bit, I lose, how about that?" After Qin Yang heard this, he couldn't stop laughing in his heart. Could these Saiyans be bullies who are not used to it, or is there really nothing in the universe of this world that can cure them? It's really ignorant. Qin Yang instead said, "Forget it, I'll let you go. If I can't kill you in an instant, even if I lose, what do you think?" Nabal was stunned and said, "What did you say?" As soon as he finished speaking, Nabal felt that something was passing through his chest, and it was hot and hot. When he lowered his head, he suddenly found that a hole the size of a bowl had appeared inexplicably in his chest, and then again looking at Qin Yang, the object presented in front of his hand came from Naba's chest cavity, which was Naba's heart. With a plop, Nabal fell to the ground, dead. Qin Yang sighed, put his heart back into Naba's body and repaired his body, then snapped his fingers on the ground and Nabas suddenly opened his eyes. Q_. Like waking up from a big dream, he looked at himself and then at Qin Yang. "How is it, have you experienced the taste of death?" Qin Yang said. If he knew that he had to struggle so much, it would be better to wait until Vegeta killed him. However, this idea also made Qin Yang suddenly enlightened, or found another shortcut. When the clues to the Saiyan planet are found, it is better to resurrect all of them, so that a large-scale mysterious energy can be obtained. But this idea has to be put in the future. Although I found this golden finger-like idea, I can only let it go temporarily. Maybe Qin Yang will do it directly when he gets tired of playing. This time, Nabil in front of him was finally honest, and began to look at Qin Yang in another way, saying, "Did I really die just now? What do you think?" Nabil clutched his chest and said, "Do you think there is a way to make me stronger?" Qin Yang said, "Have you heard of Super Saiyan?" Super Saiyan, this piercing Nabis heard repeatedly from Vegeta's mouth at that time. It is said that he is a god who has only appeared in their nation for 100 years, and is the strongest person in the universe, even that Frieza may not be in the eye. But how could the person in front of him know this? Nabil said, "Why, are you a Saiyan too?" "No, let's not discuss these extra words. In short, I have a way to make you a Super Saiyan. I wonder if you are willing." Hearing this news, Nabil jumped up excitedly and said, "Of course." And Qin Yang was waiting for his words. "Okay, then you stretch out your hand." Nappa's huge palm appeared in front of Qin Yang, and Qin Yang also pressed his hand on Napart's palm. Suddenly, a wave of energy passed into Napart's body like an electric current, and soon the big man let out a scream. At this time, Qin Yang was transferring part of the energy in his body to him, or opening up something in his body, and if he wanted to fully develop the potential, he would have to suffer. Qin Yang thought of Raditz again. To say that Raditz and Sun Wukong were born from a pair of parents, why is the gap so big? Maybe it's a different growth environment. This Nabil is much better. Even though he is still screaming, Qin Yang feels right that this bald head is gradually adapting to his own energy, although after the end, these huge energy will not stay in his body. It can be considered that the hard work pays off. When this process is over, a huge glistening sweat appears in front of Qin Yang. This can be regarded as Qin Yang's bad taste. "How are you feeling now?" The other side, a giant sweat that seemed to be reborn said, "It's extremely sour." Chapter 0942-Unexpected. And this man had only been a wicked big man before. Nabis closed his eyes and felt the changes in his body. He didn't know before that when he could reach such a state one day, he would be like a god. No, Nabis clenched his fist. He is now a god. Suddenly, he made a movement, as if he threw something out of his palm, but nothing happened. A few seconds later, in the dark depths that could not be seen by the eyes, a small incident happened somewhere far away. Massive energy annihilation. Nabil looked at these hands and said, "This power is beyond my imagination. It's amazing." "How? I didn't lie to you, did I?" Nabil looked at Qin Yang and said, "I am very satisfied." And the bald head looked very funny. Qin Yang naturally didn't need to bear it, he covered his stomach and laughed. This scene was somewhat ironic to Napart, and the audition scene was embarrassing. Nabil frowned, his brows twitching, but he could imagine that his heart must be full of annoyance. Surprisingly, Nabil didn't have a seizure, but suddenly bowed to Qin Yang and said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Qin." Qin Yang stopped smiling, but this time he was very surprised. He never thought that Nabis, the big man who had killed countless people, would suddenly respect him. But after thinking about it, Qin Yang also thinks that there is nothing wrong. The description of this big man in the original book is only as a brainless villain, and what is this person like? According to Qin Yang's feeling, maybe this person is a useful talent. No, does the material need to be tempered, and now it is necessary to collect some mysterious energy. Qin Yang waved his hand, and Nabil immediately stood up respectfully. It seemed that he still knew the etiquette. Qin Yang said, "You don't have to thank me. After all, I also have my purpose. If we can achieve it, it will be a win-win for us." 7. Nabil sighed and seemed to understand the meaning of Qin Yang's words, and said, "Do you really want it?" Nabil clenched his fists. "Don't worry, with my current strength, I don't think any of those guys outside are my opponent." Qin Yang made a stop gesture and said, "No, that's not what I meant." "That's it." Nabis made a puzzled expression. "Come here and bow your head." Nabal's huge body stepped over in 2 steps and did as he did. Perhaps in order to take care of Qin Yang, Nabil restrained his momentum, and this subtle move had to deepen his impression in Qin Yang's heart. Chin Young put his hand on the bald head, and a soft feeling began to spread over Nabil. Chin Young said, "Now you can change back to the form you were just now, the stronger the breath, the better." "I'm afraid it will hurt Mr. Chin, don't you think?" "Those are nothing, let's get started." Nabil did as he did, and in the blink of an eye, the golden-haired Arhat returned to Chin Yang's field of vision. From Naba's feeling, the feeling that was very soft and comfortable before has disappeared with his changes, and in exchange is a tingling like a needle stick, and the tingling dare to continue to increase. The concentration of chi is not enough, if it is bigger, it may hurt a lot. You'd better endure it. The ugly words are ahead. If you dare to resist or want to take advantage of the opportunity, you'd better get rid of it now. Are you my strength? You know, once I find out, your fate will be worse than death. Don't worry, of course I don't dare to make trouble in front of Mr. Chin. After saying this, Nabal's chi became like gastritis from a jet engine, and Chin Yang's clothes and hair were also blown up. At the same time, Nabas was also enduring the pain of needle sticks, and as time went on, the pain seemed to get worse and worse, until at last Nabas's people seemed to be walking in a sea of swords and fires. His eyes were tightly wrinkled, and the beads of sweat that were the size of beans were constantly emerging like rain, but they were evaporated by the high temperature on the surface of the body before it dripped. Nabal's hands were moving in vivi, and his body was shaking slightly. Although Chin Young closed his eyes, he could see all of this clearly in his heart. In fact, in the current form, it would be inaccurate to say that Chin Young had no precautions, but even if he had taken precautions, in terms of the attack power and speed in the first form of the Super Saiyan, it was definitely too late to dodge. But even if Chin Young was hit, he was only slightly injured, and he could recover in a blink of an eye. But Nabil didn't know this. If he felt unbearable at this time, he could give Chin Young such a punch, and it was zero distance. After all, the two were so close. Opportunities are in sight, fleeting, how to choose. This will undoubtedly be a test for Nabas, and this test will ultimately determine his fate. Perhaps the seemingly unintentional choice can decide the fate, and such a test is often the most deadly. But what about Nabas? With the physical torment, he began to reflect on what was going on around him. Right now, there is someone who is far stronger than him, and he is still riding on his head. I don't know if he is absorbing his own energy or what. Although Nabil himself has also received epic enhancements, what does this Mr. Chin think of himself? Before, Vegeta could not tolerate losers in his eyes, and even put down his dignity and face and reached out to beg, but what was the final result? Is death. Nabas is just someone's subordinate, a cannon fodder. This grievance has been hidden in my heart for a long time, but what about this Mr. Chin in front of me? Will he also just see himself as a prop, not a person? Nabil closed his eyes. It seems that although this big man is usually a little reckless, he really has a secret side that people don't know about. Nabil clenched his fists, hesitating in his heart. Now the big man was at a crossroads in his life. Previously, as someone else's subordinate, he had to surrender because of his inferior skills, not to mention that Vegeta could only be regarded as a captain, and above him there was a terrifying Frieza. And although Nabil himself is addicted to fighting and killing, he is not born with bloodthirsty. Sometimes he doesn't want to be too absolute, but if he doesn't do that, he will die, so what can he do? Nabas has no future. Or is it that soldiers can only die in battle, and this death may come in the next second or tomorrow? Chapter 0943_Nabal's Choice. Above, what looked like golden light and thunder light rolled on it. Chin Young thought of this, should Nappa still decide to order the killer. It's a pity. Without any hesitation, Nabil threw a punch. The punch was so powerful that the wind around him seemed to change, and the earth was trembling with it, but what about Chin Young? Chin Young was still standing there, his hand on Nabal's head, and Nabil just vented a little and punched the ground. I'm sorry Mr. Chin, I can't help it. Nabil explained. And this is his choice, or a somewhat scheming choice. His intuition tells him that since the person in front of him can stimulate his potential, it means that everything is likely to be under his control. If he makes a rash move, it is very likely that, as Qin Yang said, the end will be worse than life. Just don't know how you look in the eyes of the other party. Such a test is also an opportunity for short-term communication. Qin Yang said silently, "It doesn't matter, hold on for a while, it will be over soon." It seems that Naba's made the right choice, and his future is firmly in his own hands. Soon, the whole process was over. Qin Yang exhaled. The absorption process of this mysterious energy was really enjoyable, and looking at Nabil, the whole person seemed to have no problem. It seems that the warriors who have been trained are different. Qin Yang said, "Nabil, I will use your energy in the future. If that's the case, why don't you just follow me?" Nabil lowered his head and said, "That would be great, but..." Qin Yang's eyes changed, and sometimes what he hated most was the questioning of him by others. And it was this subtle look that made Nabil feel that his decision was very wise, because at this moment, Nabil seemed to be in a freezer. This is definitely not a look that I can provoke. It seems that the universe is so big that I used to be too rampant, thinking that except for the characters who are more powerful than myself, I can only be crushed by myself. Say, but what? Facing Qin Yang's cold tone, Nabil said tremblingly, "I'm afraid that the boss I used to follow will come to him, and I don't care when the time comes. Those troubles will find Mr. Qin's head, then." Qin Yang put his hands behind his back, turned around and said, "Don't worry, even Frieza is not my opponent, and your troubles are my troubles, you just need to follow me at ease." Although these words sounded a bit arrogant in Nabal's ears, he still dared not refuse. He just thought, Frieza, that monster, no one has ever made him serious, and destroying a planet is just something he wants or doesn't want to do. Maybe Mr. Qin. Nabas, you stay here first, and I will call you again when I need it. Qin Yang's people had disappeared at this time, leaving only this sentence to Nabal's ear. And Nappa bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, everything is subject to the arrangement of Mr. The universe is vast and boundless, but for some people, this boundlessness may not necessarily be so far away." When Qin Yang returned to the Dragon Ball world again, the battle in front of him had been going on for a while. Qin Yang concealed his breath, and stared at such a cruel test for them like a shadow. At this time, a young man with a naked upper body was standing on the uneven rocks. Judging from his posture, he must have been practicing all year round, with solid muscles and a confident look even at a disadvantage. Now he is thinking in his mind, to triple the power of Kaiwang Fist, can his body withstand it? And standing opposite him, the mighty little Saiyan Vegeta is also provoking, "What are you doing? Kakarot, why haven't you made a move?" During the previous period, the two had played against each other several times, and the situation that could be reached for the time being was 5-5. But if I have to say one or two, maybe Vegeta has the upper hand right now. Vegeta said, "It seems that I chose the wrong opponent. I am the strongest among the Saiyans. No matter how you cultivate, you will be defeated by me." Hearing these words full of conceit, Qin Yang secretly felt amused. This guy really doesn't know where his confidence comes from. On the other side of the grass, a Fattian was also hiding there and quietly watching the battle situation. He said with his own idea in his heart, "Oops, it seems that the Saiyans have the absolute advantage, I have to escape as soon as possible." In fact, if history is really rewritten, he must still be unable to escape. After all, the Earth will eventually be destroyed. And Sun Wukong suddenly had a fighting spirit at this time. Maybe it is his destination to let go of some and fight to the fullest. He tore off the remaining clothes from his waist and said heroically, "Okay, even if I smash my body and bones, I have to use the Triple Realm King Fist." Vegeta said, "HMPH, don't be complacent, I just let you dodge on purpose. If I kill you all at once, what's the fun of fighting?" Faced with such an explanation, Sun Wukong chose to be speechless for the time being. And the figure of the fat man on the other side appeared again. Yatkilob must have been wandering in his heart, and he was not willing to escape. After all, he was friends with Wukong. He thought to himself, "I can't help but want to come and see the situation." Ah, that guy's reach is too high. What a nightmare. At this time, as the aura on Sun Wukong's body changed greatly, Vegeta felt uneasy. Take it. Triple World King Fist. Another world, another short and fat man with a strange appearance is also worried. It is the king of the Northern Realm. No, Wukong, you can't bear it. This is true, Sun Wukong's current cultivation base can't bear 3 times, but in the later stage, let alone 3 times, even 3,000 times is not a problem. But right now, this is Sun Wukong's choice. There is only gambling, and only gambling. Realm King also lost his mind and said silently, however, from the current situation, it is indeed impossible to win. I really did not expect that the opponent is so strong that this duel may be lost. On Sun Wukong's side, as the airflow on his body reached the fixed point, as he kept shouting excitedly, a stream of steam suddenly came out of him. The wind pressure came from Sun Wukong's body, but instead of blowing outward, it was attracted by his body. Vegeta has eaten so much, and even he himself is attracted by this strange wind for some reason, if it is not for his excellent skills. Vegeta said in surprise. This. Chapter 0944 Don't tweet with the surname Sun. In the faraway Guaxian house, the detector on Bulma's head began to quickly calculate a certain person's combat power, and everyone around came over curiously because of the sound. What's wrong? It should be Goku, his combat power is rising sharply. 17, 19, 21, with a sudden bang, the detector on Bulma's head exploded. This is another classic term used to describe the origin of the horror of someone's combat power, exploding the watch. Vegeta flew out. No matter how arrogant he was, he couldn't withstand all the attacks of the Triple World King Fist. Sun Wukong followed and chased for a while, like an eagle intercepting Vegeta in a weightless state in the air. Vegeta flew out again, but after all, he was considered the prince of the Saiyans, and he would not be in a desperate situation. He gritted his teeth in the air, and with a force on his body, stopped his body in time, but Sun Wukong also adjusted in attack mode, suddenly, bypassed him. Vegeta thought this was an opportunity, and he threw out an energy cannon, but in just an instant, the figure of Sun Wukong in the distance suddenly disappeared, leaving only the energy cannon with a long tail. Suddenly, Sun Wukong appeared behind Vegeta, with another heavy kick. Vegeta's face was twisted, frowned and flew out in pain, landing in the pile of rocks. But this arrogant guy of course refused to lose like this. With a loud cry, Vegeta exploded with energy and smashed the surrounding stones into pieces. You bastard! But scolding is useless. At this time, Vegeta can't keep up with the speed of Sun Wukong under the threefold King's Fist. Even if he fights back, he will only be beaten. Until the stomach was hit hard by Sun Wukong, Vegeta covered his stomach and bent down his proud back for the first time, and a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. You! Sun Wukong jumped to the other side, and he was tired too. At this time, Vegeta couldn't understand why the battle order of this guy who was abused by him before surpassed him. It's absolutely impossible. I'm a super talented warrior. How could I lose to a lower level warrior like you? Vegeta refused to put down his arrogant head, and doing so was also increasing his prestige. After all, his heart had already begun shake. I am the strongest warrior in the universe. But in fact, he didn't know that Sun Wukong's condition was not much better. At this time, he was in severe ninja pain, and the Triple World King Fist was not what he could bear at the moment. If he continued to use this move, he might fall first. It's him. Behind the rock, Yaki Lobe, who saw everything, secretly cheered on Sun Wukong. Work hard, hit him. Vegeta wiped the corner of his mouth. His eyes were bloodshot at this time, and he had never been so embarrassed in his life, or felt so angry with anyone. The shaking in his heart further aggravated his emotions. Especially when he saw the blood on the corner of his mouth. Blood. That trash actually beat out my noble blood. Vegeta yelled. I can't spare you, absolutely can't spare you. In fact, this sentence is the most humiliating. In the later stage, he may never have thought that he can get through this guy who wants to smash his corpse into pieces. Suddenly, an extremely strong energy erupted in Vegeta, and with this his anger, he leapt to the sky, and at the same time assumed the pose of his ultimate trick. This time, try if you can dodge. Even if you dodge, the earth will follow. Qin shook his head. This group of guys is a planet-level outbreak at every turn, and they are still talking about it. In fact, it is not the case. This move is not the earth, at most it can only destroy this area. Ecosphere. And Qin, who is boastful, would never say such a thing. However, this form is unfavorable for Sun Wukong. If you can't hide and can't hide, you have to fight. Sun Wukong's energy also skyrocketed, and at the same time he took a pose, the turtle Qigong of the threefold World King Fist. Vegeta roared in the air, "You can't stop my afterburner, the earth will soon become cosmic dust." Yaki Luobe covered his head, and at first he said very much, "Ah, if I had known that I would die, I would have eaten more meat buns." Two energies Shangwei, one from the sky and one from the ground, do not let each other. The surrounding stones shattered one after another, spreading out with Sun Wukong as the center, and the scene was like the end of the day. In the sky, Vegeta, who was wrapped in energy, felt a resistance. He didn't expect that such a powerful afterburner would be blocked by another energy. Of course Vegeta refused to accept it and increased the power. After all, this was his last move. And Sun Wukong on the ground also felt the pressure from the other side, and he desperately shouted, 4 times. Suddenly, the energy around Sun Wukong suddenly increased sharply. The flying of sand and stone is also getting stronger and stronger, as if the sky has changed color due to the collision of two huge energies, and the entire area is full of light that makes people unable to open their eyes. 4 times. The turtle Qigong under the fourfold World King Fist is indeed unusual. This time Vegeta felt that the energy pressure from the other party was beyond the wiring that she could bear, and she started to be blocked. Everything seemed to be out of control, but no matter how hard Vegeta tried, he was finally pushed out by the giant light wave from the ground, and this push, along with the huge amount of energy he released, was also used by the other party. In the face of enormous energy, everything is in vain. Vegeta's figure melted into this energy, and the so-called super protective strands on his body also shattered. In fact, as long as Vegeta knows the truth of a certain Dragon Ball world, he will understand how stupid he is. Don't be with the surnamed Sun. Push wave. However, if there is a chance, Qin would like to give it a try and see if he can overcome this truth. On the ground, Sun Wukong had done his best, and was standing there panting heavily, as if he was injured no less than Vegeta. And this battle is not over. Although Vegeta can't be seen in the sky, his body is immortal, and his spirit is not extinguished. After realizing his mistake, Vegeta moved to the side, from the huge shock wave. Freed from the bondage. He shouted angrily, also angry at his own disappointment, "Bastard! Ah, how is it possible?" And what he has to do next is exactly what Qin ignored. Chapter 945-Neglected Great Ape. Impossible. I am a Saiyan, and I am the strongest warrior in the universe. Roaring the incomparable middle two lines, Vegeta has fallen into a gaffe, blown out the hair and the mine manager's eyes, everything has fallen into madness, and perhaps even he himself will be unable to control himself. Blood is flooding the veins, because of anger, because of unwillingness, arrogant self-esteem is his only support. It doesn't matter if his home is destroyed, it doesn't matter if he kills his companions, the strong do not need to be tied down, so Vegeta must not lose. Lost on this little earth. After roaring, "It was too hard," Vegeta gasped. Suddenly he showed a hint of cunning and said, "HMPH, I won't be defeated by you, even though I hate that ugly appearance, I'm still going to become a giant ape." Vegeta clenched her fists in front of her as if she made up her mind. "Hey. Let you see the super destructive power of my transformation into a giant ape." He began to raise himself above the clouds, muttering ventingly, "In order to eliminate the Earthlings as soon as possible, I chose the day of the full moon to reach the Earth. I didn't expect that just one Kakarot would force me to transform. It seems that he is not completely overconfident, and he has left this preparation for himself. But as the clouds got farther and farther away, Vegeta suddenly realized that the moon he was looking for didn't seem to be here. What's the matter? The moon should have come out long ago. In the Realm King realm, on a miniature new ball, the short and fat man of the Northern Realm King secretly rejoiced that Piccolo had met him long ago and destroyed the moon beforehand. So the Saiyans never thought of finding the moon on Earth. Speaking of which, this is still an episode that happened in Piccolo's practice with Gohan. At that time, the moon was full, and Gohan was hiding on a boulder and was so frightened that he didn't want to see the moon, and suddenly his body changed, and in a blink of an eye, it turned into a constant. A monster covered in black hair. Piccolo tried to stop it, but what shocked him was that the giant ape was super destructive and irrational. Maybe it would destroy the Saiyan before it came to the Earth. But the smart Piccolo immediately realized that it was because of the moon. Suddenly, the explosive power of the planet level appeared on Piccolo in the early stage. It was just a charged energy cannon. Piccolo killed it easily moon, so Gohan was restored to his original state. Kaiwang thought, but Goku is exhausted, and even if the Saiyan doesn't turn into a giant ape, his situation is very dangerous. But the Saiyans are also exhausted, and if they use vitality bombs, there may be hope. $0. On Earth, Sun Wukong looked at the sky and stared at the figure of his opponent. At this time, the red sunset was about to sink into the other end of the mountain. Carrot. There was a trace of doubt in Sun Wukong's heart. He felt very strange. Vegeta in the sky seemed to be looking for something, otherwise he would attack according to his temper. In the sky, Vegeta became annoyed and discovered the truth. There is no moon, how could this be? He calmed down and could only curse again. It is estimated that Kakarot destroyed the moon before he came. But Vegeta is not without a way, or it has to be like this, although it will consume most of the energy in his body, but in his current situation, if he wants to win, he must use this method. Thinking that Sun Wukong will be panicked after the transformation, Vegeta laughed proudly. Vegeta landed in front of Sun Wukong, and the other party was thinking about how to kill him with the ultimate move of Vitality Bomb, or he should be able to hit the energy to gather energy. Vegeta clenched his fists with disdain. His expression changed from the unwillingness and anger when he was beaten before. He said, "It was you who destroyed the moon, but you will still lose." "What are you talking about?" "The moon." But Sun Wukong had no idea what he was talking about. "Don't pretend to be confused. Let me tell you the mystery of the Saiyans transforming when they see the full moon. Transformation. Vegeta gave a detailed explanation. When the sun shines on forgiveness, it will be reflected. This is Gecko, and only the sunlight reflected by the moon contains Frutz waves. The full moon is the generated through the energy of the Subo can reach 17 million. If the eyes of the Saiyans absorb such a powerful Frutz wave, they will transform on the tail of the reaction channel. In the universe, there are many different sizes around many planets. The moon, but only a full moon produces more than 17 million Frutz waves, and I saw Vegeta's palm, a star spot suddenly floated up, like a sparkling ball. The Saiyans were able to use oxygen and energy balls to create an artificial full moon of over 17 million Frutz waves. Just wait, Kakarot, you're dead. Vegeta laughed wildly. A lower-level warrior like you can never surpass me. I'm a super talented warrior, ahahaha. But if he hadn't seen this scene, Chinyang would have almost forgotten this, giant ape. Saiyans also have this unstable form, and whenever they see Gecko, they will transform into huge monsters. And if as expected, this is also some kind of manifestation of the mysterious energy in the depths of the root. Think about it, the state of the giant ape is to suddenly increase its combat power tenfold, whether it is physique, strength, and of course speed. For Goku and others, this is simply an invincible existence. It seems that Qin Yang's experiment has another way. On the ground, Sun Wukong asked inexplicably, the light ball that was generated, his chi was also consumed violently. I really don't understand what he wants to do. It's true that this ball of light consumes too much energy in Vegeta's body, but it's well worth it. Fighting is a gamble, and only those who dare to gamble can win. Vegeta threw the ball high into the sky, and when it rose high enough, Vegeta clenched her fists. Mix with oxygen. Silently, a strong light radiated from the sky, stabbed people to the point of being unable to open their eyes. When the light dissipated, it was as if a bright moon appeared in the sky, and it was a full moon. Even if it was not night, the moon would still emit light that was not inferior to the sun. Everyone present who watched the battle was taken aback. Of course, apart from Qin Yang, this little trick was completely insignificant in front of him. It's stumped, he created a moon. The king of the realm exclaimed, perhaps this is beyond his ability. And Vegeta started laughing wildly, saying, you should regret not losing your tail, Kakarot. In the blink of an eye, Vegeta's eyes began to change, and there was a crisp sound of bones from his body, but the clothes were not broken, but grew larger together, and then a huge shadow appeared. Chapter 946 _ The Disappearing Nabas. Qin Yang smiled, and the person disappeared as soon as he turned around. For him, watching this kind of low-level fight like a fistfight, he didn't care about it. And just received the goods, and now he can't wait to verify the idea of the giant ape. In the sky, against the setting sun, the large and small islands in the sea are like shells, bathed by the sun. However, under such a scene, the two figures were flying rapidly in the air, as if there was something important. I am going to the Turtle Fairy house soon, hurry up and go to the rice. A man in the sky who looked like a little monk said, it is worth mentioning that he has no nose, and this person is Kaylin. And Gohan is a child after all, and he can't exert his full strength with his own subjective consciousness, so he can only reply, okay. But a light in the distance suddenly prompted them to stop, because it was a strange light. Krillin looked back and said, why is the direction we came from so bright? Is it a star? Gohan said, no, not like a star. Suddenly, the two realized that something terrible might have happened, especially after a very strange breath came. Very strange, but also very powerful and violent, with the feeling of Vegeta in it, but more of a kind of tyranny, an aura of evil, accompanied by screams and destruction. This is absolutely not anyone on Earth. Species of creatures. But in Xiaolin's heart, he once felt a similar breath. What was it? Kaylin was worried and at the same time very surprised. What happened? There is still a strong surge in the foreheads, and it is still strengthening. Could it be my dad's madness? Ah, but it doesn't feel right. It should be the cyan. It's amazing. Such a strong aura. Klein exclaimed repeatedly. Maybe he will see someone stronger than this in the future, but this strange aura can indeed wipe out all the masters he has seen before. Suddenly, Gohan seemed to have made up a certain determination. Maybe it was a father-son connection, and with that strange aura, Gohan felt very uneasy in his heart. I have to go back. What? Are you going back to help Wukong? Yes, my dad may be in danger. That guy's martial arts are too high, it's useless for us to go. I understand, Gohan said, but I have to go back. 7. In another world, Qin Yang was searching for Nabal's figure. He was still thinking if Nabal turned into a giant ape, would his head be bare? But after looking around, Nabal didn't seem to be here. Qin Yang closed his eyes and took a breath. He already knew all the information here. Nabal's people weren't here, so where would he go? It turned out that during the period of Qin Yang's departure, Nabal made an astonishing decision by himself. For his benefactor or new master, he felt that he would have to meet his past master, the so-called strongest guy in the universe. War. And now that he has gained extraordinary power, even he can feel this incredible power, so can he kill Frieza as a favor on the one hand, and follow the warlike nature of the Saiyans on the other hand? Woolen cloth. The beard above Naparte's lips moved with the muscles of his face, revealing a very confident smile. Just do it. He secretly made up his mind. At present, this otherworldly space can no longer trap him, and after watching Qin Yang come and go, he also knows the principle of opening the door here. That originally seemed unpredictable move, but after Nabil evolved into the form of a Super Saiyan, the senses have also improved dozens of times, so once this seemingly magical ability is dismantled, it will be nothing. It is nothing more than emitting a very strong energy. Of course, the amount and scope must be well controlled, and the important thing is the frequency. Naturally opened. But Nabil still had to admire it. He could never find or create this space. Qinyang opened his eyes, and after understanding the whole story, he had to admire the fact that Nabis did something beyond his expectations twice. It seems that the power of the Saiyans is stronger than he imagined. The site also shows that for these people, he can no longer accept his subordinates casually as before, and he must change the method so that they can be completely under his control. It seems that the giant ape experiment can't be done this time, but not necessarily. And you have to stop Nabil, because such a script is not what you think. Now it is too early for Sun Wukong and others to be Frieza's opponent. After all, it is estimated that Nabis will become more disobedient to discipline in the future. Qinyang thought about it, and then a figure appeared behind him. Aizen, chase someone for me. Aizen looked expressionless, and said, oh. A Saiyan named Nabis, you'll know the details when you go. But at this time, another voice suddenly came from the dark. It seemed that only Qinyang could hear it. Master, why don't you send me there? I heard from the ghost that those so-called Saiyans are just trash, and I haven't been out for a long time. This voice is Ju Yi. Qinyang said, Ninth Master, it may be a little unpleasant, but you really may not be able to defeat them. Oh, is that so? And the characters that my Ninth Master is not sure about. I really want to see and see. Well, since you want to try it so much, it's your turn. Remember, it doesn't matter if you live or die. Oh, Ju Yi smiled secretly. It seems that his master Qinyang has reached this level. Being able to revive a person at will means that if he thinks about the underworld, he can't find any trace. Although his power is usually very strong, he still can't do this. It seems that this is the power of the 7-star level. Qinyang is not the kind of dictator who doesn't think about himself at all. He fully understands Ju Yi's heart. Although this does not conform to his judgment, things like this will change at any time in the future, and no one can tell within that second. Which is the final result. Moreover, this kind of thing is not a big deal. Even if something goes wrong, he can make up for it in time. Qinyang said, Okay, Master Ju, I'll let you come out for activities. Ju Yi responded, and a man with a golden aura appeared in front of Qinyang with a puff. Don't worry, you will never be disappointed. The smell of this guy is still there, so it shouldn't be hard to find. Aizen smiled and said, I can go back to sleep again. Qinyang left a message to Juya, I know you are lucky. He also took a step forward and disappeared. Juya clenched his fists, and a pair of slender eyes released a fierce and seductive aura. Don't worry, I will definitely get him back. Chapter 947-Nabis Determination. Qinyang returned to the main world of Dragon Ball, trying to verify the experiment on the giant ape without destroying the cake. Right now, Sun Wukong was leaning over his tired body, and he didn't know how to describe the landscape he saw in front of him. It seemed like a miracle, but it was definitely a miracle that was not good for him. How come? In front of him, a giant ape wearing a battle suit but with an aggression roared at him, fearing that just one hand of the giant ape would be enough to crush Sun Wukong's body. And for a while, a strange aura also doubled. The momentum was like a rainbow, majestic and fierce, unpredictable and uncontrollable. I'm afraid this is an extremely difficult opponent, but I don't know what its speed will be. The giant ape roared, his body covered with hard black hair, and his eyes glowed with scarlet bloodthirsty light. What made Sun Wukong even more incredible was that this guy actually said something human. Ha ha ha, Kakarot, your doom is here. At this time, Sun Wukong realized that the fierce giant in front of him was transformed by Vegeta. Huh, how did you become like this? Is this the true face of the Saiyans? Giant ape monster. The proud Vegeta explained involuntarily. Let me tell you, after the savage becomes a giant ape, the combat power will increase sharply to 10 times. And Sun Wukong seemed to remember something and didn't listen at all. The first thing he remembered was what his grandfather said to him when he was a child. Wukong, a giant ape will appear on a full moon night, don't go out, stay home and sleep. But when he woke up one day, he found that his village was completely destroyed. It seems that the gods have also warned him. Just let your tail grow out, or there will be disaster. Sun Wukong suddenly realized. I finally understand, it turns out the monster who trampled my grandfather to death and destroyed the martial arts venue was me. After all, he is also a Saiyan, and he also has the ability to transform into a giant ape. Of course, this is only what he knows. There are several transformations without knowing it, and the first destruction of the moon was done by the immortal turtle at the world's first martial arts meeting. The sad fact cannot eliminate the enemy in front of him. Monkey King suppressed this guilt. All he wants to do now is how to face the elusive future. Gritted his teeth, mourning the past in his heart. I'm sorry, Grandpa 1 Saiyan is too strong. I have tried my best, but I still can't beat him. If I die, I will apologize to Grandpa in the underworld. Why? This obsession may be beyond the reach of ordinary people. In the distance, the little fat man Yakulob looked at the mountain-like giant ape monster that suddenly appeared, and his heart grew furious. What is that? A monster? And that thing exudes a huge murderous aura, and it wears a pair of clothes, it seems to be the Saiyan. At this time, Sun Wukong made up his mind, that was his last trump card, and also his last hole card. HMPH, try my incomparably powerful vitality bomb. Of course Qin Yang had already sensed what Sun Wukong wanted to do, but he couldn't just let him do it. The giant ape Vegeta roared, and a huge fist hit him like this. Sun Wukong jumped away in time, and the solid boulder under his feet instantly turned into pieces. It can be seen how terrifying the attack power of this giant ape is. If Sun Wukong dared to use the vitality bomb at this time, Qin Yang would definitely hit it back. Zhu Yi, since he has been upgraded, he only needs to condense chakra outside, and he is the incarnation of energy, so he can survive without food or oxygen. Zhu Yi's eyes flashed with fighting spirit, but he didn't believe that he could not beat that bald head. The golden nine-tailed fox was gliding in the sky. Just by virtue of this ability, Zhu Yi had already defeated Nabal. At least, Zhu Yi thinks so. Zhu Yi's leap in the air is tens of thousands of kilometers, and the reason why he can track Nabal is because of his sense of smell. In other words, that detached sixth sense. As long as he remembers the target person's molecule, Zhu Yi can feel the existence of the other person, even if he is beyond light years, even if he is no longer in this world. But before that, neither human nor animal sense of smell could have reached this level, and Zhu Yi's hand can be said to have improved his senses to the extreme, and in history, no one has ever had such a skill. For the current Zhu Yi, nothing can escape his pursuit. What about Nabas? He found the aircraft he had come from, and was about to rush to base camp, Planet XX, and Frieza must be pampering there. Recalling that many years ago, his homeland had been destroyed by natural disasters, and Nabal himself had been following Vegeta to the north and south, but today, Nabal suddenly had a feeling, and he couldn't describe what it was. In short, it made him very excited, but not completely excited, as if there was a trace of suffering in it. In fact, Nabal didn't know that this feeling came from the sixth sense of being a Super Saiyan. He vaguely felt an amazing secret deep in his heart, that the planet Vegeta, the planet where the Saiyans lived, and it was not destroyed by natural disasters, but by man, and that person was Frieza. Because Frieza feels the immeasurable potential of the Saiyan people, this potential may one day surpass him, and although he is powerful enough now, he still cannot rest assured. Like a king in the land he rules. As long as there is a trace of unfavorable factors, it is bound to be completely eradicated. As long as anyone dares to defy his own will, what awaits him will not only be death, but will be erased from the universe together with the planet behind him. The control of power has already made Frieza crazy. Frieza became more and more took himself to the position of a god. And Nabil just faintly felt the thrill of revenge. As the few remaining Saja people after the destruction of planet Vegeta, Nabil has always obeyed Vegeta, and Vegeta obeyed Frieza. They searched everywhere for planets inhabited by life, of course, planets that could be called civilizations, and then slaughtered the human race here, and finally sold them as commodities. This point is somewhat similar to Qin Yang, but Qin Yang will not use excessive force, nor will he commit extinction at every turn. Even though he has killed many people, he is not cruel, and what he wants is only mystery. Energy, and the process was more of a game for him. Vegeta has been pretending to surrender to Frieza, so that one day, she can surpass Frieza and avenge her compatriots. Of course, there is another reason. As the prince of the fighting race, Vegeta's ambition is evident. He has long made up his mind to sit on Frieza's throne one day. Chapter 948_Explode. But Vegeta never told Nabil the truth in his heart to the few people who were of the same race, so Nabil never knew that he was still carrying such a blood debt, but even before, he knew the estimate. Nothing will change. This is the true meaning of being attached to others and enjoying a life of fighting. After all, Frieza is an unfathomable character, and Nabil can't guarantee that he will be able to kill him one day. The guy who seemed to him in the past was terrifyingly powerful, so powerful that he could easily wipe out a planet. Monster. Only this word can describe him. But now it's different. Now, he's following a new owner and has a new life. This power surprised even him. I wonder if the current self can be called a monster. Or, is it God? No, Qin Yang is the real God in Nabil's view. Even if he is not a Super Saiyan, Qin Yang still has a way. Not to mention that he seemed to be looking for something in his body before, but these are not Nabas. Interested, for a person like him, as long as there is a fight, as long as he can continue, or nothing can attract his attention. Although he was also curious, how could Qin Yang know his potential? He also thought about the connection between Qin Yang and his hometown more than once. Maybe there are many unknown mysteries in the universe. Maybe so, but he doesn't need to think too much now. He just wants to crush that little monster, and thinking of this, Nabil feels a surge of excitement, excited about blood and battle. No, he can't break out yet, he has to restrain himself. Of course, even if he couldn't compare to Frieza before, he could still guess in his heart. No matter how powerful Frieza is, I'm afraid he still has a chance to kill him. Even if he is weak now, he has enough to gamble capital. As a fighting nation, how can it be fast without fighting in life? Besides, it is only fun when the outcome is unknown. Just like those planets that Nabil slaughtered before, there are many masters from all walks of life, and every battle that puts his life in jeopardy makes him stronger. The potential of the Saiyans is limitless. Nabas was now absolutely convinced of this. Only through countless deaths can he be awakened, and he also felt that the Super Saiyan was not the end of his potential. Maybe he had to wait for him to go back and ask his new master about it. And now Nabil wants to show off in front of this new master, and take the head of the strongest person in the universe in front of Qin Yang. As for whether his infinite potential can surpass this new master in the future, Nabil never thought about Q. The baseball-shaped flying chess was flying at the speed of light, and Nabil closed his eyes inside, quietly waiting for the advent of a century war, a battle that was enough to subvert history. On such and such a planet, the flying chess of the baseball company streaks a flame in the air. Large bases on the ground have received the information and have opened the no-catch nets to land the spacecraft safely. Said to be a net, but it was nothing more than a circular thing opening on the ground. But all the mysteries are hidden in this disc. The material that looks hard actually turns into an elastic material after being pulled by a huge force. It has a lot of tension, so it can easily resolve the impact of the spacecraft landing. After the synchronization between the signal station and the spacecraft will automatically lock the landing point after fine-tuning the trajectory, so it can accurately land on the net. This class alone has already crushed the Earth, and Frieza's empire is truly extraordinary. But for these aliens who are wearing combat uniforms and have probes, they have never thought about what kind of battle will happen in this indestructible and expert base camp. Because no one did this, except for the disputes that individual players saw only, such battles were limited to certain dueling venues, but if anyone dared to attack this place head-on, that would be really boring. But never doesn't mean it never will. When the door of the Stars flying chess opened, a shirtless bald giant sweat slowly opened his eyes. Suddenly, a fierce light shone on the guy who was in charge of recycling the flying chess. He jumped and asked, "What's wrong with Nabble?" And Nabble was just VV Isho. Suddenly, a shock wave came out of his palm, and the guy who didn't even have a name was punched through, but the shock wave didn't stop immediately, but continued to pass through his body, towards the wall. There was only a rumbling sound, a sound of alarms, and the situation became serious. The usually rambunctious personnel woke up one after another, thinking that something had happened, but they never dared to think that they had been attacked. But it was this thought that hastened the death of some of them. Nabble looked at the palm of his hand, thinking that his power had increased so much even in the thumb form. In that case, Nabble laughed evilly. Everyone around was dumbfounded. Someone asked loudly, "Nabas, what are you doing?" "I don't do anything, I just want to have fun." "Are you crazy? Don't you know where this place is?" "What place? You rubbish haven't had your turn to talk to me about where this place is." Suddenly, Nabble gathered energy on his fingers, which was an ultra-explosive wave. This move first brought the index finger and middle finger together, and the other three fingers were clenched into a fist shape, and then concentrated the energy to follow all the target locations in a wide range with one. It was blown up by light and instantly razed to the ground. When he first came to Earth, he used this trick to destroy a city. I don't know what the power of this move will be if I change it here. The people around were shocked, but they were still a little capable. The guy who reacted quickly had already started to counterattack, but the sword had been drawn, and there was no blood. How could it be withdrawn like this? Nabble smiled weirdly, and suddenly the sky seemed to turn black. No, the light was too dazzling, and everyone was seeing a visual stop brought by the flashing of extreme light. Only a slight pop was heard, and when the world returned to peace again, most of the entire polar region, with Nabble as the center, was completely reduced to ruins, just like a super bomb detonated here. Nabble laughed wildly and said, "It's really fun, ah ha 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 ha." At this time, the people who reacted attacked one after another, thinking that this stupid bald head suddenly went crazy, but the next moment, when a collective incident happened, everyone felt a hint of evil, and all the detectors were there. It was broken in an instant, and there was only one possibility: someone's combat power exceeded the maximum value of the detector. But how is this possible? In the face of the incredible strength, everyone has the same doubts in their hearts. Chapter 949-1 Step Late. But nothing is impossible in this world. It's just that the stupid will die first, and the wise have already begun to flee. But as a soldier, and a soldier of the Forli Sadi country, a few will escape. Besides, the Saiyans are not the only fighting race in the universe. Under Frieza, who is not a character without two brushes tilde. And most of them don't pay attention to Saiyans at all in normal times. Even the most powerful Vegeta is only at the level of a team captain, and there are many guys at this level in the polar regions. But the usual impression blinded their eyes. Why no one thought about how Nabble would blow up half of the base in an instant. Unfortunately, these guys all thought that it was caused by the accidental detonation of the fuel depot. Nabble laughed wildly and flew into the sky, waiting for waves of trash fish to come and die. Seeing a pair of people rising into the air, looking like a swarm of flies from a distance, Nabas was full of fun. He wasn't going to kill them right away. He wanted to see when that Frieza would be unable to sit still. In an instant, two trash fish rushed up, and Nabble held his breath and took their tricks effortlessly. Then there were 2, and Nabble was still at ease. Then 3, 5, 10, and quickly Tukba was surrounded by a group of people, like countless seals surrounding a flower, all scrambling to try new things. But Nabal's speed didn't know how, so that his huge sweat became like a piece of paper, unusually flexible. At this time, someone reacted. When did this guy become so powerful? Nabal might be a little tired. He suddenly roared, and a layer of electric energy surged up from his body, and then another burst, blasting everyone out, like blasting away a group of flies. But this is not the ultimate goal. When those trash fish are exerted by huge force on inertia, that is, when their control force is less than the force exerted by their body, Nabal's man suddenly turned into a shadow. Waiting for his body, the shape reappeared, and the guys floating in the air all turned into pieces, heads, bodies, arms, thighs, like toy soldiers torn apart. It fell in pieces, and the sky was more like a rain of blood. This time, the other people who had not yet shot were stunned. They never thought that Nabal would become so powerful. It is far beyond their imagination. Under the premise that the detector cannot predict, there are only two situations. One is that they think that their combat effectiveness is far superior to that of Nabal. They may still be able to do this. The other half is that the value is low in battle. And a lack of confidence. Their hearts have begun to be conquered by fear. Nabal laughed wildly. Ahahaha, that's all you need. If that's the case, Frieza's subordinates are really trash. Ahahaha. I equals. Someone pointed at Nabal and retorted, bastard. It looks like you are trying to rebel. Nabas spit out and said, bullshit, can I still kneel at Frieza's feet now? I might be able to survive while you stop in time. If King Frieza knows about you, you will die without a place to be buried. What if I want him to know? I just want him to know. But he is really a coward. He only depends on the number of people, and I have to kill a few before he is willing to come out. Nabal put his hand on his chin and looked like he was thinking. It seemed that Nabas still didn't know the fact that Frieza had left before he arrived, and it was all because of Vegeta's eloquence. It turned out that although each communicator could talk to each other, the frequency was different, but at the main base, all frequencies could be received, and Frieza, as the highest leader here, of course had any rights. And what he is most worried about is these Saiyans. Although there are still 3 people left under him, and for him, they are very powerful, but he has never completely let them go. In fact, he is monitoring all the time. With these 3 people, even if they arrived on Earth privately, there are some things they talk about. He listens every day. Of course, he is also spending time in his spare time. On the other hand, he also has the last time. He has patience and stamina to observe them, and even has the meaning of treating them as guinea pigs. Take a look at this group headed by Vegeta. Just how big a storm can be, and if anything threatens him, Frieza feels that according to his ingenuity, he can stop the situation from getting worse in time. Ellipsis. Ellipsis. Winds extreme, dream of love, 773,943,984. The extreme wind, Wanwa mirror, 874,542,149. Closing square bracket ellipsis ellipsis. Ellipsis. But something happened recently, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was more like his hard work over the years finally paid off. He learned about Dragon Ball, a thing that can fulfill any wish. Maybe the ones on Earth are no longer usable, but far away on Namek, there must be related things, even better than those on Earth. Wish in advance, how can this not be tempting? No matter what kind of person you are, you may have unfulfilled wishes. For Frieza, money is not what he wants anymore. As for power, he is probably already standing at the top. Even as a Saiyan, he has never had the opportunity to show his strength for so many years. He lives every day just for fun, and is very loyal to tap some potential stocks, such as his Nuque Special Forces. He has enough shrewdness, grace and endurance, and he can ask the powerhouses in the entire universe to serve him, but there is still one thing he can't do at the moment. There is time. Nothing lasts forever, or enough time to die after consuming his ambitions, and all he wants is to keep these things under his feet forever, like a child guarding his toy box until he wants to. Forever, and want to get all the toys in the world. Then this would require eternal life, preferably even eternal youth. The appearance of Dragon Ball has awakened the ambition that was originally in the heart to form a specific implementation goal. Although his lifespan is long enough, although he has almost everything, these are not enough. Not enough. Dragon Ball. Desire. This is a great gift for Frieza, just knowing this information is enough, and the rest of Frieza certainly has a way to achieve it. The magic grasp just stretched out to Namek, which is far in the sky, and a hero is bound to come. And when a certain trash fish said these words to Nabas, Nabas suddenly became angry. What? He's gone. Ah! An energy burst came again. Nabal ignited the flames on his body, and the dregs that had been turned into ruins became even more shattered. Chapter 950_got you. After a burst of light, the remaining beings on the ground have seen the power of the godlike man in the sky. But in their hearts, there has never been anything that Frieza the Great has done wrong. The phone call was passed on so quietly. Far away on the spaceship flying to planet Namek, a fat man with red skin ran over in a hurry. For some reason, his head was covered with fleshy spines the same color as his skin. Dodoria, what's wrong? What happened? Behind a short man, another beautiful man with long hair said. No, the headquarters is under attack. It's Nabas, the one under Vegeta's. Nabas, isn't he dead? This group of people all have combat scanners on their heads, and the combat uniforms on their bodies are also the same, all of which are standard military equipment. And when the man sitting in the eggshell-shaped chair turned his head, a murderous aura also floated over, making people shudder. Dodoria shivered involuntarily, for fear of offending this person by saying something wrong. Well, King Frieza, look. Frieza thought for a while and said something that surprised everyone. Leave it alone, Dragon Ball is important, and no matter how strong the Saiyans become, it is impossible to completely destroy the place. Just let them be used to their leisure time on weekdays and teach them a lesson. Yes. No one dared to question his orders in this unequivocal place. In other words, if he asks you to go to the east, you must go to the east, and if you die, you will die. If you dare to question it, you will die. If the person he targets refuses to do anything for him, then it will die too. And the irony, this guy's power is too strong, no one can escape from his clutches. But not everyone can be proud of it for a lifetime, and the debts they once owe will be repaid sooner or later. At Frieza's headquarters, Nabal's anger had begun to get over his head. I didn't expect that I would run for nothing. He fell quickly, hitting a high-rise building with his head. When Nabas got up again, he scratched his tongue and asked, "Where is Frieza?" Namek. The man seemed to have urinated his pants with fright, so Nabal threw it away and glared at it again, and the unknown pawn just shattered in the air and died. I came to play with a bunch of junk, damn it. I'm going to demolish this place. Nabal began to vent his anger. No matter who he was, he could destroy his opponents without the use of the second form, and in his opinion, apart from Frieza, there might be no one who could stop them. FJ, is this true? No, maybe in their opinion, this is the full strength of Nabal, maybe there is. Tilda. In other words, the most elite character under Frieza, the Genuit troop. This is also a calculation that Frieza is so proud of. In his view, there are very few people who can surpass Captain Ginyu in combat power. Even if he does, Captain Ginyu has a unique trick of swapping bodies with the opponent. It's a pity that, in a certain corner of the underground, some of this group of special forces are already dead, and some of them fainted because of no precaution when Nabal radiated the blast wave. The thing is so ingenious, it may be said that someone escaped the disaster. And what brought this group of cosmic robbers is only deep despair. Nabas continued to wreak havoc, venting, and it all seemed like it would never end. However, following someone's words, Nabas suddenly stopped his body. How are you going to get back if you ruin this place? This was a voice that Nabas had never heard before, and the breath on his body was also unfamiliar, but there was no doubt that it was extremely powerful. Is it Captain Ginyu? Nabas thought so, except for him, there may be no one else here who could have such a strong breath. But looking at the strange eyes of the people around him, Nabil suddenly became very curious, who dared to come out of this gang of trash. What surprised him was that the person in front of him had never been seen before, and he was not dressed like a guy on this planet. He looked more like someone from a remote tribe, and his eyes were slender. The eyes are raised pupils like animals. Not to mention his head staring at something resembling an ear. There is also the aura on his body, which is very strange, with a seductive charm, and there is a faint yellow light on his body. What the hell is this weird? Nabil questioned. Other party said again, or you don't want to go back at all. Who are you? Nabaz asked. 9 masters. Juyi didn't show weakness, and told him directly. Are you here to die? Nabil suddenly became interested. No matter who the opponent was, I am afraid that the strength is not bad, and he just needs the person to warm up. After all, as long as he is willing now, it will be a matter of minutes to destroy this place. Do you look like me? Juyi's temper also came up, and he was also not to be outdone. You'll know if you take a punch from me. Nabil showed a wicked smile and punched Juyi in the face. But Juyi not only didn't dodge, he didn't even blink his eyes, he just took the punch. If you change someone else this time, Kongba's entire head will be gone. This was beyond Nabaz's expectations. Juyi smiled and said, is that so much strength? It seems that you are not good enough, it should be like this. Juyi also responded with a punch, hitting Nabil in the stomach. The entire fist did not penetrate the muscles of Nabil's abdomen. If he knew, the muscles of Nabil's abdomen were as hard as steel plates. It was not easy to hurt him, let alone his entire hand. Nabil bent down, sweating profusely on his forehead, and even the corners of his mouth oozing red. After he straightened up again, wiped the corners of his mouth and said, it's interesting, but this is the end. Of course not. After Juyi finished speaking, he punched Nabil again on the face, chin, chest, and abdomen. After the whole set of punches, Juyi turned around and gave him another kick. The bald giant's sweat flew out just like that, and sank into the ruins on the ground with a puff. But Juyi knows that this guy will not be defeated so easily. If this is the case, Juyi will probably have to vent here. A second later, the ruins suddenly exploded, and Nabil rubbed his shoulders and walked out from the inside, with a look of joy on his face, and said, it's really enough to see, I'm really happy, this trip is not completely in vain. Juyi also had high fighting spirit and said, don't worry, the good show is yet to come, let's take it slow. And the people around me who didn't know what to do were all stunned, and a war was about to break out. Chapter 951_Juyi vs Nabil. On the ruined field, one left and one right, the two faced each other like this. The smoke of gunpowder was still coming out continuously, and even though the people around were in shock, no one said a word. The fire was burning, the wiring of the crushing machinery, the electric current creaked non-stop. With a strange expression, Nabil raised one eyebrow and looked at this strange man who dared to compete with him. As for Juyi, he had a smile on his face, but he was not showing kindness, but a strong expression of disdain for his opponent. Nabaz twisted his wrist, not knowing what to do. Juyi crossed his hands on his chest, waiting for the opponent to launch an attack at any time. Juyi has secretly opened his own perception system. No matter how fast the opponent uses the right speed, what kind of means, or from any unexpected direction, Juyi it can be perceived, that is to say, he is foolproof now. But is there really a foolproof business in the world? I don't know, but it may depend on who the opponent is and who is doing the business. Nabil's expression suddenly changed, and he was full of energy. Juyi frowned, thinking of the change in the other party's breath. At that moment, as if time stood still, there was only a blank space in my mind. When everything returned to the familiar noise, the person in front of Nabil suddenly flashed vivi, as if the screen of the TV was disturbed and shaken. But things are not that simple, nor did they end this way, it is just the beginning. Suddenly, Juya flew out, as if he had received a heavy blow on the face. He rolled on the ground twice before he could stand firm. His face was stained with blood, obviously being hit by something heavy. Juya wiped the corners of his mouth, raised his eyebrows, gritted his teeth and said with a smile, "Isn't it bad?" Nabas was silent, and returned a smile, and suddenly his figure flashed again. Hearing a muffled sound this time, Juyi flew out again. This time, he clutched his chest and stood up with gritted teeth. The injury was more serious. But this time, when he raised his head, Nabal smiled and the servant disappeared completely, and Juyi secretly cried out in his heart. And around him, there seemed to be a strange wind blowing around him, blowing in an undirected way, but no shadow could be seen. Before Juya could react, suddenly, fists from all directions flew over like a torrential rain, and poured all of them onto Juya without a single drop. With a heavy blow, the bones on Juya's body were shattered without knowing how fast, how much blood was shed, and his body looked smaller and more distorted. The people around were terrified. They didn't expect Nabal to be so powerful, not only in strength, but also in speed as fast as lightning. Could it be that no one here can stop him? When Nabal's figure reappeared, the bald-headed man put his hands on his hips and burst into laughter. "Is that all you can do? I'm so disappointed if that's the case." Juya propped up his fragile body, and one arm seemed to have been twisted out of shape, and he was now enduring a lot of severe pain. Juyi spat out blood and said with a low voice, "It doesn't seem to disappoint me too much." Naba raised his brows and said, "Oh." In fact, he was happy in his heart, and even looked forward to it very much. He really wanted to see what tricks this guy with golden light could use, otherwise it would be really too much. Boring. Of course, Juya couldn't just fall down like this. In fact, he felt all of Nabal's attacks, and he didn't take any defensive measures. Juya's purpose was to taste how hard Nabal's fist was. How far he can hurt himself. Now he has an idea in his mind, but it's not bad. Juya raised his head, his eyes suddenly lit up, and his body suddenly looked like a flame was ignited. The scars on his cheeks, arms, stomach, and his body were quickly disappearing. In a few seconds, all the places where Nabal was injured were like number recovery. "It's my turn." Juyi showed a charming smile, and in the blink of an eye, no one was there. Nabal hesitated for a while, then showed a happy smile. After a search, the people disappeared, and only the sound of crackling and fierce fighting could be heard in the huge ruins. The trash fishes under Frieza were stunned. Based on their current combat power, they had no idea what was going on in this blank space, but they knew very well that this was not a battle that they could participate in at their level. Effect itself. But this kind of thinking is like a crow's mouth, and once you think about it, it can happen. Or thinking is inherently a magical magnetic field. A lucky person must have a very relaxed mood every day, and a person who is listless all day is bound to have no luck. Especially when a certain idea is widely circulated in the crowd, although everyone is tacit to each other, the same thinking leads to a common destiny. Of course, the probability of such a bad thing happening is not 100%. But also quite high. Suddenly, several beams of light shot out from an invisible place. When people thought of them, it was too late. In the sound of the explosion, several other fish were killed, and this seemingly transparent area became a murderous servo. But this situation is far from over. From time to time, the head of the trashy fish watching by the side is suddenly exploded, and then in another seemingly irrelevant section, a huge hole appears in the abdomen of another trashy fish. Seeing that the number of deaths is increasing, the trash fish feel inexplicable, but they don't know how to escape, because some unlucky people just escaped. They pretended to be this invisible battle, and then instantly turned to ashes. But this hesitation only lasted for a few seconds in the crowd, and a large number of people began to flee. In their opinion, even if they were Frieza's battle-hardened warriors, some of them didn't even know they were destroyed. How many planets? But this kind of exaggerated battle and play is not something they can handle, so it is not that they are irresponsible or too timid. After all, their life is their own, as long as they survive, there is hope, right? But I just don't know if their destiny is to die or continue to live on after being found out by their King Frieza. It is estimated that he will die. After all, Frieza only sees useful people. The miscellaneous fish began to flee one after another, and the crackling fighting in the ruins never stopped. Instead it became more and more, and people disappeared. From time to time, inexplicably, a burst of light came from the air, followed by an explosion, a more and more powerful explosion. The atmosphere is getting tense, and the monitors in the distance are watching it closely, but what can these people do? Let's just hope that this victory will be decided soon. Chapter 952 each other. I don't know how long this situation lasted. Suddenly, the crackling sound of fighting disappeared, and two figures appeared in one south and one north, both dressed in elegant clothes. One was a bald big man with a sanctimonious appearance, and the other was a weird-looking thin man. Boy. The same is that the momentum of the two people has not weakened in the slightest, but has become stronger and stronger. It didn't disappoint me. It seems your speed is pretty good. Nabal excitedly said that this exciting battle made him feel very happy. The Juya on the other side is not a fuel-efficient lamp. This kind of hearty battle is also a pleasure for him, but Juya is thinking, who will enjoy the last one? Must be me. The two of them may be thinking about this sentence at the same time in their hearts. Even if the tone of the speech is different, the meaning must be this. Juyi said arrogantly, I am very curious, but if you go faster, you won't be able to keep up. In terms of speed, Juya is not false. He has absorbed all the power of the huge nine tails and now he has no idea what it will look like. Nabal smiled and said, oh, are you talking about speed? To be exact, I don't know my limit yet. It would be best if you could continue to accompany me, but just talking and not practicing is not enough. Accidentally will kill you. Juyi thought to himself, this tough-mouthed bald head, but still beware of it anyway, provided that this bald head can take his next move. With a swish, Juya suddenly rushed in front of Nabal, and Nabal's expression was slightly stunned, because in his experience, Juya didn't seem to have moved, but suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. But the matter wasn't over yet. Juya waved his hand quickly and punched Naba's chin. Bang bang, another three-stage strike. Juya's body shape changes very quickly, and every time it appears, it seems to appear out of thin air. When Naba's fell heavily to the ground, a hole several times the size of his body was smashed into the ground, and the scene was as if a bomb had fallen. Juya floated in the air, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and said, how about this speed? I'm afraid you can't hold it anymore. However, what Ling Juyi didn't expect was that when Nabal stood up slowly, he just rubbed the huge bald head. As for the rest, it was as if nothing happened. If you know that Juyi just made a ruthless attack, he didn't show any mercy at all, in order to return all the injuries that the opponent hit him before, and only 3 hits are enough. In this way, this guy's defensive power, how tall is it? Naba shook the dust off his body, smiled, and said, hey, it's fast enough, but it doesn't look like it moved over. Why do you move instantly? Juya frowned and Vivi frowned, feeling a little unhappy. Unexpectedly, this guy can really see through his own moves. Indeed, it is no longer a displacement, but a momentary movement that can be carried out with the sight of the eyes, but the body cannot move when it is used. Therefore, this move must be used flexibly in conjunction with tactics, otherwise it is easy to be caught by the opponent when encountering a strong opponent. Naba moved his neck and said with an excited smile, why, don't you continue? The trick just now was quite fun. Juya is very unhappy now, because he didn't expect his tricks to be seen through since it was so simple, but even so, as long as he can change flexibly, can this guy really be able to resist? Apparently the result is immediately known just by trying it. Juyi launched an attack again, and his men suddenly appeared in front of Naba's. This time Naba's no longer hesitated, and after seeing the target, he immediately punched with incomparable energy and momentum. Things must be completely shattered. But this time Juya was just a false move. He didn't make a move but moved in front of Nabal, and with the flash of other people's shadows, Juya's people had appeared behind Nabal. Nabil knew that he had emptied a punch, and his response was not slow. Even though he knew that the punch could not be taken back, his head turned around and squinted at Juyi. And Juyi smiled wickedly. A huge amount of energy had gathered behind Nabil. In Juyi's hand, something like a firefly appeared. Juyi gently placed it behind Nabil. At this time, Nabil realized that something was wrong, and turned to kick back, but Juyi succeeded in sneak attack. He smiled and dodged the kick, and then he saw that Juyi was standing in front of Nabil with a little secret. Blast! Juyi snapped his fingers and said with a relaxed face, according to Juyi's budget this time, the bald man might be injured. Only a loud bang was heard, and Nobis's back shone brightly, and a small-scale explosion happened behind Nobis's invisible back, still on his own back. But after the explosion, Juyi's original smiling face froze immediately. The rude-looking bald man in front of him just gritted his teeth and touched his back. Although he should be in pain from the expression on his face, Ju the master knows best that the stomach of the foxfire just now is only inferior to the small-tailed beast jade. Condensing such chakra, does it only hurt the other party's fur? Juyi was still surprised. The current situation was in his hands. After all, he was a veteran who had seen the world. Juyi realized that he should be serious. The bald man in front of him was not just an ordinary character, although it seems unintentional with those trash fish. Nabil scratched his back and also felt a surge of anger. In his opinion, Juyi was just playing tricks with him. He would only deliberately beat himself, and then he would use some strange moves that were not painful or itchy. It's necessary to get this weird-looking guy serious, otherwise. Nabis made up his mind, and his death came early. As soon as the two sides were serious, it actually became a little different. Contrary to the arrogance of the previous surge in momentum, the chi that Juyi had restrained to help increase his attack power turned into a chi that was more flexible and more suitable for explosions. This is quite different from his previous style. As for Nabil, he didn't think it was necessary to continue to increase his chi. As long as he started ruthlessly and added qigong waves, it would be enough to deal with the guy in front of him. It seems that both sides have left behind for themselves, and they are two conceited guys, but although conceited is not an idiot, both sides also guess that the other side must have trump cards, so this battle is not a large-scale fight. The strength exploded, but it was a long-term tug-of-war. Whoever revealed his trump card first proved that he couldn't hold it first, and as long as he could hold out to the end, he was the winner. Chapter 953_Serious Juyi. Juyi smiled, his palms suddenly condensed a chakra. Nabil sensed this energy and stared at Juyi's hands. Suddenly, the people of the 9 masters disappeared, and Nabil's heart tightened, but his anger would not disappear. Then Nabil roared angrily and moved forward to grab it. It's here. When Nabil's hand stopped, Juyi was caught in Nabil's hand. Juyi was startled and was speechless for a while. A smirk on Nabil's face, he said proudly, I still want to play this game. As long as I'm serious, you can't escape. Now I'm not that patient anymore, go to hell. Nabil slammed Juyi to the ground, but at the moment he let go, Nabil suddenly felt another breath, although it was not strong, it was rushing towards him. Suddenly Nabil realized the danger, and in a short period of time the chi burst out of his body at a rapid rate. On the left side of Nabil, a black sphere the size of a palm flew over at a high speed. In Nabil's hand, Juyi was thrown to the ground with a terrified expression, and then turned into a cloud of smoke. Before Nabil had time to dodge, the black ball hit and a violent explosion occurred. From a distance, a giant mushroom cloud slowly rose, the ground trembled, and the trees swayed. In the depths of the ruins, in a surviving house, a person opened his eyes. Originally, he was only in deep sleep, and he did not even feel the collapse of the house caused by the explosion, but this power seemed to a different kind of commotion made this man open his eyes. Strange, why am I lying here? What the hell is going on outside? But when the smoke cleared, Nabil lifted his arms from the top of his head, and his body was unscathed due to the protection of high-density energy. However, the ground suffered, and in a large circle there appeared a small crater that looked like it was smashed by a meteorite. On the other side, Julia stood up. He pretended to be relaxed and shook the dust in front of him, saying, "It seems that I still underestimate you, your body is really not ordinary." However, saying that, Julia also felt it. The small-tailed beast ball might not be able to kill him, but he still had to test the level of the opponent's strength. And now he knows, at least in terms of defense, this guy is on par with himself. No wonder Qin Yang's first choice is not him. But Julia secretly made up his mind, this time he will never allow Qin Yang to be disappointed of. Nabal glared angrily and said, "Damn, you are using some ghost tricks. It seems that you are just like that, but don't let me catch you otherwise." Nabal paused, and then shouted, "I will definitely cut you to pieces." 10,000 paragraphs. Equals Q's. Obviously, the 9 masters have completely angered Nabal, and the 9 masters hope so. He is taking this battle seriously now, so in a real battle, once the anger goes to his head, the scale of victory will gradually fade away. Will be transferred to yourself. It seems that Julia has also improved a lot. If he changed his fighting style would be close to that of Nabal, and he would directly turn into a beast and confront his opponent. Nabal squatted down and put on a sprinting posture. It seemed that the leader of the battle was about to change from Julia to him, but this was exactly what Julia expected. Nabal rushed out and went straight to Julia, faster than before. Julia stared, raised one hand, and seemed not ready to dodge. Nabas shouted, "Looking for death." Seeing that the collision was about to happen, Nabal looked unstoppable as part-timers, but don't forget, Juyi's power is also quite terrifying, and he is currently useless even with a tail. Right now, Juyi's eyes changed, and he suddenly grabbed 2 energy-like tails behind him, and as soon as the tails came out, they immediately converged into 2 big hands in the front section, just before Nabal rushed over. The 2 collided like this, and Naba put one arm on Juyi's 3 hands. Nabal was stunned for a moment, not expecting that his charge could also be stopped, but instead of making a move, he continued to exert force. The chi burst out under his feet, and the ground under his feet shattered, and 9 Lord Vivi Isho, the 3 hands are more powerful, even more vigorous than Nabal, but this is only an appearance. When Nabal threw himself into it, he heard only 2 bangs, and Nabal suddenly said that there were 2 more 9 masters, and the 2 9 masters who appeared after that seized the opportunity and launched an attack. Each issued a black ball the size of a slap. Nabas realized that he was greatly taken aback, and he didn't expect that he would be put again, and it was this trick again. The small-tailed beast Jade issued, looking at Juyi, jumped into the air. The explosion came later, and the smoke and dust billowed below for a while, making it impossible to see what was going on. But Juyi's perception told him that the bald head was still alive, or that Juyi originally planned to do so. He rose into the air, his hands gathered energy, and suddenly, a huge black ball different from before appeared, and then threw it down. A more violent explosion came, Juyi had long since avoided, and a bigger mushroom cloud appeared in front of him than before. With a smile on Juyi's face, he said, "I didn't expect such a tailed beast Jade to hurt you, but you must be very angry." As soon as the voice fell, Juyi's face changed, and he suddenly jumped away from the person, and the whole person jumped away in the air for a certain distance. Followed by a huge sweat with some tiny scars hanging on his body. Nabal's eyes were bloodshot, and he said, "Bunny, see how I teach you a lesson." Following the big man and catching up again, Juyi then dodged. "Every time I almost get hit, and every time I dodge easily." According to the speed of the 2 of them at this time, Juyi really felt that although this guy is huge and looks like a power type, he did not expect the speed to be so fast. In other words, Juyi doesn't even have enough time to release his skills now, but he likes it, and the excitement is more fun. Suddenly, Juyi's people disappeared. Nabal felt a huge force behind him, and he hit a random energy ball with his backhand and said, "I want to play this trick again." But when Naba turned around, his people were suddenly stunned. The energy ball hit something different from before, but from the breath, it was the same as the guy before. Then Nabal smiled and said, "I didn't expect you to be transformed too." It turned out that he opened his 9 tails, and the energy ball was bounced off by one of his own tails. Juyi said, "There are more that you can't think of." Nabal regained his composure and said, "But that's right, it seems that you want to compare your strength with me." "How do you know?" "Because you don't have any backing hands. You will be caught by me sooner or later if you continue, right? It seems that the outcome will be decided soon." Juya laughed secretly, thinking about this self-righteous fool, but he didn't say it, and instead followed Nabal and said, "If that's the case, if you have the ability, try it." Chapter 954 The Awakened Nabas. Fire, a fire flickering. Like an ancient god, majestic and untouchable. Juya's body was blazing with golden light, and the flames of the demon fox swayed up and down on it, not just on the surface, but also in his eyes and heart. The raging fire seems to be weak, but once it is flooded, it is enough to start a prairie fire. Chakra is almost a bottomless pit. This huge but small body carries the power far above appearance. The 9 tails seem to be independent, swaying in different directions, but at the critical moment they can have a heart-to-heart connection and come together. Their strength is enough to break mountains and rivers. Their strength is not small in appearance, but invisible. Juya floated in the air, as if shining brighter than the sun, like a lamp that does not need a stage, and where the light can reach, there is no darkness. Juyi was full of confidence. He looked at Nappa, the bald head he once underestimated. This time, the fire of the demon fox will not be so gentle, and it is not the play of children. A little fire is enough to level a building. Speaking of a city, even for a while, the country can be burned to the ground. Nabal wiped his nose, and the half-stubble on his lips showed an edge with the rising corners of his mouth. Because of the sweat on the bright head, like a mirror, only a vague flame was burning on it. At this moment, there is no need to increase the chi in his body. This is already his critical value. Beyond this point, it is his last trump card, and since it is the trump card, it is only a flaming weirdo to deal with in Nabal's eyes. No need to activate the ultimate form. Maybe this time Nabar was careless. When Juya showed his posture, no one dared to say that he could fully withstand it. It is estimated that only people of Uchiha Madara's level could be completely blocked by this ability. As for the reckless man in front of him, in Juya's opinion, this has already given him enough face. After all, Juya has not used this attitude to fight with others for a long time since he upgraded. If you say that Nabal has a spotty level, Juyi couldn't believe it when he was beaten to death. Madara was the guy who made the ground tremble after taking a breath. The Nabal in front of him is at most a shadow-level guy. How could Juya like such a guy take it seriously? Nabal smiled and said, "It's interesting, it actually has 9 tails, one more than our Saiyans. It's a strange move, but it doesn't look like a fake. Could it be that you can't transform?" Nabal guessed right. In fact, it is a transformation. It is better to say that the body is restored, and now this close to human appearance is the transformation, but I am afraid that Juya himself is not very clear if he is now restored to the body. How powerful it will be. Juya didn't answer, but left a sentence. "Jay, that's enough for you." Nabal's dark color changed, and he suddenly turned around and raised his right arm to block Juya's attack. At the moment when the picture freezes, Juya's body, including the tails that are close together, is like a pen, attacking vertically, and then the picture flows. Juya changes his second punch. Naba's reaction is also very fast, and the backhand succeeds again. Block. Juyi changed his moves again, twisting the 9 tails behind him into a thick and long steel whip and swept towards Nabal's head. Realizing the extraordinary power of this move, Nabal hurriedly tilted his head back, escaping in a thrilling manner, but his face was already painted. Nabal gritted his teeth, but his fist slammed forward. Juyi jumped back flexibly, and at the same time as his feet touched the ground, his 9 tails stood up one after another, and rushed forward again. Juya's tail constantly changes the direction of the attack, and it gives the impression of different strengths, high and low, bright and dark. Nabal was dazzled for a while. After all, his fists were no match for 4 hands, not to mention that Juya had 9 tails and 2 hands, and Nabil only had 4 limbs. Bloodstains appeared on Nabal's body, face, neck, thigh, and most importantly, Nabal's heart began to mess up. Although this is not a good person, but the big guy who is used to it is the second time he has encountered a guy who plays with him back and forth. In normal times, maybe Nappa is too strong, and others will die if they have such a chance. And thinking back to the first time I had this experience, an impressive explosion reverberated in Nabal's mind. At that time, although he was already very strong, he still lost to a person, that guy named Sun Wukong. If he had used all his strength at that time, he could have solved himself with almost one move, and then he begged again in his life, begging Vegeta to help Nabas the last time he was so downhearted he couldn't remember when. Unexpectedly, not only did Vegeta not help him, but he also threw him into the sky, and his arrogance alone was enough to kill himself. Naparte's heart was cold at that time, but he didn't blame Vegeta, it was because he was too much for the Saiyans, and in the eyes of people like them, failure was equivalent to death. Ba ended up dead. Thinking of this, Nabal's heart suddenly calmed down. Although he was reckless, he was not stupid. Last time, he was too impatient to lead to failure, and this time he can't be carried over by the same stone again. Nabal's eyes changed, as if he had just woken up from a big dream, and the pain caused by the blood stains on his body was not so obvious. With a loud roar, Nabas burst out with arrogance, like a Vajra madness. With Nabas' body as the center, gusts of wind blew everything away, including Juyi, and this was Nabas' purpose. Juya blocked his face with his 9 tails, thinking that this bald orangutan was starting to go mad. He stepped on the air, trying to wait for the hurricane to blow, and attacked again with the advantage of the air. The wind stopped earlier than Juya expected. Juya put down his tail, and in front of him, on the ground, Nabal's expression made him feel a little strange, because it was not a person who was angry. But the tense battle rhythm could not help but think about it. Nabil laughed wildly and once again held his breath, and the gravel on the ground also floated up, showing how strong Nabal's chi was condensed this time. But he doesn't plan to transform now. His actions are just to hide people's eyes and ears. The threshold of chi is one aspect, and the power and flow are another aspect. In the end, this value will still be reduced and the chi will flow on the body, like a layer of armor, and it is lethal at the same time, but this way the opponent will mistakenly think that this is a change of Nabas' move. Even, in the bottom of my heart, where is the strong anger just now? Maybe the other party will use explosive tricks. In fact, this is just a means of confusion, although the premise is that it must have extremely powerful chi, and as long as the other party is calm enough, the flaws will be found. But fortunately, before Nabas, he had been following his nature and going mad, and it was also because of his blind arrogance. Juya was a little convinced, even a little doubtful. Nabil suddenly rushed into the sky in front of him. Juya had no time to think and had to prepare for the shock. Chapter 955_Fury. But Nabas didn't make any exaggerated actions, just people rushed over, but faster than ever. Juya flashed past, and Nabil started to chase excitedly. Juya used his tail to resist. Nabil gave a manic slap, and Juyi's tail was torn off a section. In fact, it wasn't because of how powerful Nabal's fist was, but because Juyi was a little misguided. He was always guarding against Nabal's sudden explosive moves. But this hit the opponent's arms, and the roles of the two changed again, one attacked and the other defended. Nabal's spirits were high, and his punch was faster than a punch. Juyi gritted his teeth and avoided them one by virtue of his nature and powerful perception system. Both of them were very fast, and in an instant, they reached the sky as high as a huge building from the deepest part of the ruins. And as time passed, Juyi kept holding a sigh of relief in his heart. He felt that since Nabil had not made a name for himself, he might as well let go and fight back. To put it bluntly, this fox's temper is not very good, but his cunning is incomparable to ordinary people. In the sky, Juya moved his tail, and the section that had just been broken has long since returned to its original state according to the instructions of the mind. The nine-tailed chakra, the healing effect is not generally amazing. Juya roared, his nine tails swayed, and he followed the person to pounce on him. Naba punched Juya head-on, but it was just a clone. The real Juya suddenly appeared in the sky, and Nabal punched again. He hit the target, but unexpectedly it was a false move. Nabal felt his hands were soft. When Nabal tried to withdraw his fist, he found that he was already entangled by Juyi's tail. And Juya's hands are in knots. A group of flames followed, which can be said to be zero distance. There is no possibility of deviation. It was the flame that chakra transformed into. For Juya himself, this might be the source of power, but for the enemy, it was a nightmare. How do you know that the situation has changed amazingly at this time? Juya has not stopped, only to see the flame suddenly turn back. But this is absolutely impossible, but how can the fact be refuted? At the critical moment when every second counts, Juya felt that there were other huge energy bodies behind the flames, but his tail was still wrapped around Nabal's arm, which was like being bound by himself. Juyi got an idea and bent over backwards. Using Nabal's arm as a lever, he drew half a circle backwards like a pendant. At this time, a shock wave rubbed the top of Juya's head. The power of the beam of light was so powerful that it was unmatched by part-time jobs. Maybe it was on the same level as Juya's previous tailed beast Jade. Boomed a hill in the distance. Pushed back by this strong shock wave. So where did this shock wave come from? With doubts, Juyi suddenly spread his tail and attacked Nabal again. Juyi thought to himself, could this bald man's single hand release such a powerful shock wave in a short period of time? But why did he pass up so many opportunities before? The confidence and arrogance on this bald face blocked Juya's attack, but seized the gap and tried to suppress Juya. The second round of a hearty and fierce fight began. These two people came and went in the air. Juya gritted his teeth and slammed Nabal with the advantage of his tail. Nabal could only use his arms to face his head, but the muscles on the body are so hard for some reason, but it seems that the mentality is very important. Juya's offensive became more and more impatient, and he turned all nine tails into the shape of claws, which was equivalent to one arm, launching a fierce attack on Nabal. Juyi was a little bit competitive with himself. He tried to break through the iron wall formed by Napa's arms. 11 arms beat wildly, the momentum is overwhelming, the speed is as fast as thunder, and every time it is with the fire of the demon fox. If this rhythm continues, Nabal's arms will definitely be difficult to resist, and even his whole person will know how to do it. The possibility of turning to ashes. But who knew that Juya was suddenly stunned? He felt a strong chi that gathered together, just behind Nabal's arms. Is it? Juyi knew that the shock wave was about to hit him, but now he was too late to do anything. He saw Nabal's arms open a gap, and a beam of light shot out of his mouth. It was the mouth. Juya was a little surprised. He never thought that this guy could release such a shock wave with his mouth. But Juya has nowhere to escape. Nabal's rhythm is just right, and this mouth-like cannon is also his strongest single skill, full of explosive power. Although Juya's body is very strong, how does it compare to the mountain? The dazzling light hit the target, and Nabal looked forward proudly. Not only was his move unexpected, but it was also powerful. Nabas was looking forward to the result of Vice Admiral at this time. He knew that he had won, but he just didn't know what the reward would be. When the light dissipated, opposite Nabal, an umbrella-covered thing gave off a burning smell. When the thing was opened, it turned out to be Juya's tail. He could only temporarily use the tail to make a protective umbrella. Even so, Juya's body was still the same. He suffered a lot of shock, and his body was covered in scars, as if he would fall to the ground if he touched it lightly. But under Juya's feet, he still has enough mental power to float himself in the air, which shows that he has not completely dissipated. Juyi raised his head, opened his eyes, and a pair of blood-red eyes looked over like this. You bastard, I'm going to tear you into powder. Juya roared, and the red light soared on his body. Nabal looked surprised, staring at the changes in front of him. On Juya's body, The hair and skin began to gradually disappear, and then it was covered with a layer of dark red things until the whole person became like this, and his bones seemed to have also changed, and two similar ears grew on his head. The spikes, the forelimbs became very long, the legs also elongated, but it showed a dog leg shape, and the body became much stronger than before. The wound on Juya's tail was healed in a blink of an eye, and the 9 tails became thicker than before. It no longer looked like a flame, but had a solid body. The overall appearance was a black monster. Juyi's eyes glowed red, and he shouted loudly. Suddenly, the energy in his body skyrocketed, much higher than that of Nabal, and there was a very evil aura mixed in it, which made people feel numb, as if with a deep sense of urgency. Of hatred. Seeing such a scene, Nabal was a little stunned, and said, "So you really can transform?" Juya raised his head and roared loudly, and the surrounding buildings trembled for a while. In the control room of the remaining building, the trash fish huddled together and looked at the picture on the screen. They were all surprised by this, not knowing what kind of monster it was, but the combat power was even more reported than before. I don't know how they could be so unlucky this time. After King Frieza left, it was not only Nabal, but also such a monster. Chapter 956 _ Ginyu appears. Juya was in a state of rage at this time, and after locking Nabal's bald head, he walked over with a groan. Nabal likes this the most. It's hard to fight hard, and this line of battle is extremely enjoyable. The two bodies collided, and the energy was also earning each other, making a sound similar to electric current. Nabal gritted his teeth and enjoyed it very much. Juyi yelled. He had lost his human form long ago, and some were waiting to vent their anger like a huge wave. The two started beating each other, and Nabal, the fist that could be avoided, didn't bother to dodge, but Juyi didn't even think to dodge. The two sides hit each other several times. Suddenly, after a confrontation, Nabal gritted his teeth and felt a sharp pain in his arm. The wound was not shallow, and blood was flowing from Naba's forearm. This also irritated Nabal again. He threw an uppercut violently, and his anger added strength. Juyi was forced to retreat, his head was tilted to one side, and it seemed that he had suffered a lot of damage. But at this time, Juya didn't care about this at all, and if he received serious damage, he could only reciprocate the damage to the other party. Suddenly, chakra began to gather around Juya's mouth. Nabal felt an unusually strong chi. He noticed the change in Juyi's mouth. A box of black spheres was slowly merging. Nabal was shocked. Bad, it was that trick, that strange black ball. Juyi slammed his head in the direction of Nabal, who was also waiting for this opportunity. He jumped into the air. With Juyi's extremely angry move, he sent it over, but Nabal didn't expect that the power would be so great this time. Juyi roared, and what spits out of his mouth is not a black ball, but a black beam with a particularly wide range. The beam continued to erupt, reaching Nabal in the air. This spray is to split the originally gathered energy and continuously spit it out from the mouth. Naba's was thrown off, and a piece of flesh was swept off his leg. And Juya's roar still hasn't ended. His head is Yonkai, and the black beam of light has drawn a long trace on the ground, as if the earth has been torn apart, and the gap is bottomless. It seems that Juya has fallen into an uncontrollable rage. Nabas gritted his teeth and scolded the rejection. Damn. This bastard actually broke my leg. As he said that, a wave of energy gathered in the palm of his hand, and he threw it towards the position of Juya. Then Nabal put his fingers together and pointed at Juyi's feet. A bang, the ground under Juya's feet collapsed, and an irregular deep pit appeared, as if it was pointed out by Nabal's 2 fingers, and the black pothole was also bottomless. At this time, in the ruins behind Nabas, the stone on the ground was suddenly smashed by a huge force from the ground, and a figure quickly came out. He stood on the ground and swept the dust on his body, which was also strange. Is there another trash fish coming to die? This person then flashed and appeared not far away. He watched everything in front of him with a puzzled expression. Said, Nappa, this idiot, when did this guy become so powerful? He seems to have surpassed me a bit. This is a big blue-skinned man with a rather odd appearance. He has two straight black thorns on his head, just above his ears, and they are symmetrical. A fool who can only solve problems by force. This person is the #1 man of the Ginyu Special Forces, the most powerful Ginyu under Frieza, Captain Ginyu. Even the name of this special agent team is named after him, but Frieza's high regard for him also reflects this person's combat effectiveness. According to his own calculations, the combat power of about 120,000 is far beyond the tolerance range of ordinary detectors, and it is estimated that it is similar to Nabel in front of him. In the eyes of Qin Yang and others, this kind of combat power may be no different from the scum with a combat power of less than 5, but it was different in the early stage of Dragon Ball world. The combat power of 120,000 almost crushed the people of Sun Wukong at the same time. In other words, if this guy is the first to arrive on Earth, then Sun Wukong is already dead, and there are no other Saiya people behind. At this time, even Vegeta, who had turned into a giant ape, was only capable of 180,000 battles, and this guy had always regarded this move as his ultimate trick. If it were changed to normal, Captain Ginyu would have completely exploded his level. Therefore, arrogance must have the capital of arrogance. People with strength like Captain Ginyu can still run rampant in the early stage of Dragon Ball. It is estimated that destroying a planet is not too troublesome. And this person suddenly appeared at this time. What did this sinister guy have in plans after watching such a scene? In the fierce battle arena, without waiting for Juyi to react, Nabel kept releasing waves of energy balls into the pit without stopping. But it wasn't over yet. Nabel took a deep breath, and the energy cannon spit out from his mouth again, this time facing the hole. When the energy completely submerged, a more terrifying explosion came from the ground, and the ground was completely shattered. One after another cracks followed. The whole ground could no longer support it, and many places collapsed because of this. Naba was panting heavily. If it were before, the energy on his body would have been used up long ago, but now, he still has enough spare energy. Even if Frieza comes back, Nabel has the capital to continue to fight with him. Naba laughed loudly. He was not laughing at his opponent, but himself. He never imagined that his martial power would increase to such a level. This was just a small development by that person. The more the Saiyans fought, the faster their combat power grew, especially when they were resurrected from the dying. Nabel clenched his fists. It seems that his future potential is really wireless. At this time, a figure flew to the back and above Nabas, and said gloomily, "Nabas, you did a good job. If King Frieza finds out, he will definitely commend you." Nabel immediately responded with a murderous look, turned his head gloomily, and said, "Oh, isn't this Captain Nuque? I thought you were all here." Captain Nuque suddenly made a "ha" sound, but instead of attacking, he suddenly danced a funny dance in front of Nabel, and finally raised one foot and put on a funny pose. Then he said in a loud voice, for fear that others would not hear, "Ginyu Special Forces. It seems that this guy is going to jump like this anytime, and even Nabel feels embarrassed when he sees it." I said, "Nabas, do you know where a few of them went? I've been sleeping before, so they must have all died in battle." Nabel said, "Oh, why, don't you know what's going on here? Why, are they really all dead?" Nabas suddenly showed murderous intent and said, "What if I said they were all killed by me?" Captain Ginyu looked surprised and said, "What?" Chapter 957 _ The Power of the Giant Ape. "What did you say?" Captain Ginyu exclaimed loudly. Surprise overwhelms doubts. Empathy, this is obviously unacceptable to anyone. At this moment, a trash fish hiding in the corner jumped out and said, "Captain Ginyu. You finally appeared, we thought you were dead." Captain Ginyu turned around and scolded, "Bastard, how could I die? You don't seem to know that everything here is Nabal's fault. He attacked it as soon as he came back." Captain Ginyu became serious, turned his head and questioned Nabas. "Nabas, is what he said true?" "Yes, I did it." "You bastard, do you want to betray King Frieza?" Nabal looked arrogant and said, "Betrayal? What is betrayal? This uncle was just using you before. Haha, now I will tear you apart one by one as food for cultivation. Captain Ginyu sneered suddenly and said, hee hee, okay, Nabal, I would like to see what capital you have to pass me. Nabas posed as if he had forgotten all the pain in his body. Stop talking nonsense, I've wanted to play with you for a long time, but don't let me down. On the earth, Qinyang stared at the fierce battle in front of him. He was like a shadow, a big Buddha hidden under the shadow of a tree. As long as he didn't want anything, he wouldn't even want to discover his existence. Vegeta, who turned into a giant ape, is unstoppable, and every punch and kick is enough to shatter mountains and rivers, and its power is as unshakable as a mountain. Due to the side effects of Kaiwang Fist, Sun Wukong's movement and consciousness have dropped a lot, not to mention the speed of the giant ape Vegeta is not slow at all. Sun Wukong fell down on the stone and turned over. The unbearable pain on his body made him scream in a low voice. But this was a good opportunity for Vegeta. Before Sun Wukong had a chance to breathe, the giant ape Vegeta suddenly rushed over and screamed, trying to crush Sun Wukong to pieces. Sun Wukong knew that he could not escape this time, so he could only fight to the death again. King Fist! He shouted, and the chi on his body suddenly returned from a desperate state to full of blood and anger, but this was very hurtful to the body. Sun Wukong suddenly jumped up and jumped to the top of Vegeta's head to avoid the disaster, but who expected that Vegeta's reaction was also very fast, and unexpectedly swept it with his tail. This time it was broken. Not only did it hit Sun Wukong, but the hair on the tail also squinted Sun Wukong's eyes. This kind of loss of vision at a critical juncture makes things worse. And Monkey King anxiously wiped it with his hands. Vegeta came again, and the giant ape Vegeta jumped again, rushing towards the Monkey King in the sky. The great ape Vegeta let out a smug laugh and said, ah ha ha. Despair, do you even have no strength to escape? The current situation is extremely critical for Sun Wukong. One step is a thrilling step. The opponent's body is so large and his movements are so agile. Sun Wukong has no time to gather energy, not to mention vitality bombs, there is no chance to breathe. For the current giant ape Vegeta, it is difficult to knock down his opponent even if he uses 5 times the Kaiwang Fist, let alone Wukong in this period, the 5 times Kaiwang Fist is already a fixed point for him. How good is this? Sun Wukong's heart is like adding fuel to the fire. This fight can be described as the first time in his life. 10 seconds, he thought in his heart, as long as 10 seconds was enough, he would be able to accumulate the energy needed for the vitality bomb. In a hurry, Sun Wukong's mind suddenly flashed. Have it. It is said that he has used this hand more than once. Tianjin Fan, borrow your trick. Sun Wukong spread his hands, and now the giant ape Vegeta is close at hand, and the next moment Sun Wukong will be crushed to pieces. At this time, Sun Wukong put his hands on both sides of Lien's smash, his thumbs turned inward, and followed him with his eyes closed and shouted loudly. Diang Fist. A dazzling light shot out from Sun Wukong's body, and his man seemed to be transformed into the sun, emitting 1,000 radiance. And the great ape Vegeta was unprepared at this time. After his eyes were suddenly illuminated by a violent beam, he ushered in stinging pain and temporary blindness. The giant ape Vegeta stopped in the air with a wow, covering her eyes with her hands. Ah, my eyes. Sun Wukong seized the opportunity to hurriedly use the Triple World King Fist to escape, and when Vegeta couldn't open his eyes, he quickly gathered energy, maybe there was still hope. Sun Wukong jumped onto a nearby rock without taking his breath away, and this position was just right. Even if the giant ape Vegeta found him, it would take some time to arrive. Sun Wukong raised his arms, and now he was exhausted, and his eyes were barely open. He began to meditate slowly. The earth. The ocean. All beings on the earth. Please share some of your life energy with me. Thank you. Giant ape Vegeta rubbed his eyes and scolded, bastard. 10 seconds, just 10 seconds, seems to be fatal at the moment, and every second Sun Wukong's heart seems to stop beating. Every second, vitality is slowly gathering. If you fail, there is only death. If you die, everything will end, no matter who it is. The great ape Vegeta's vision begins to recover. Well, the bastard. Sun Wukong made up his mind. Vegeta has opened his eyes, but fortunately there is a distance from him. According to the plan, before he launches an attack, Sun Wukong can preempt him and use vitality bombs to settle him. Great Ape Vegeta shouted. Damn, where are you? Do you want to escape? You can't escape, I can find you according to your anger. Unexpectedly, in a short period of time, Vegeta has mastered the use of chi to judge the position of others. It is true that he is a Saiyan, and it is not unreasonable for him to call himself a genius. Right now, the vitality of life begins to condense, but Vegeta has seen Sun Wukong, but the vitality bomb has not yet fully formed. Sun Wukong urged himself, I must be faster, faster. It can be considered that there is no way out of the sky, and it can also be considered that Sun Wukong's luck is very good. The energy bombs gathered successfully. Qinyang looked at the sphere with a smile on his face. Great! Sun Wukong turned from worry to joy, all the vitality of life on the entire earth has gathered. Sun Wukong gritted his teeth, ready to gamble. But at this time, Vegeta, the giant ape, suddenly let out a long roar, and a strange aura suddenly rose up on him. Hoo-hoo! The giant ape Vegeta did not rush over, but opened his mouth, and an extremely powerful shockwave attacked in the direction of Sun Wukong. The sky also changed color for a while, and Sun Wukong had no way out. He was hit, the stone under his feet collapsed, and people flew out. Chapter 958-9 Fox. With smoke billowing from the ruins, Captain Ginyu looked at Nabal with his eyes. There was a hint of contempt in his eyes. Maybe it was something wrong with his brain that this bald head was able to speak so wildly when he opened it. Even though the destructive power Nabas has done so far is astonishing, if he wanted to, he could have done it, even more completely. Moreover, even in the face of an opponent whose combat power is much higher than his own, Captain Ginyu still has a very special move, and there are many strong people who have been defeated by this move. The combat power that Frieza can trust so much is not a vain name. Nabal looked at Captain Ginyu excitedly, and said wildly, What? If you haven't attacked, are you afraid? Captain Ginyu smiled and said, HMPH, Nabal, you underestimate me too. As soon as the voice fell, the two figures disappeared in an instant. With a snap, the two met in the air, and Nabal's fist collided with Captain Ginyu's fist. At this moment, two strong auras collided together, and an impact started to spread out along the center of the two, and the storm caused by the shock wave blew up again. The wind blew so much that people could not open their eyes, and the two began to fight in the air, and then a gust of wind blew up again. The planet is too small to hold these two people. It seems that every time, the whole planet is in the morning capital, and every time, the Earth is enduring an unbearable force. Individual trash fish began to emerge, as if there was hope for them again. It's not bad that it's Captain Ginyu, that bastard Nabal will know how good it is right away. The fierce fight continued, but at this moment, in the corner, where Juyi fell, a huge claw suddenly appeared. At the same time, an aura swept the entire world. Although it was invisible, no one could ignore its existence. Ginyu and Napart in the sky were also stunned, and instinct made them look in the same direction. I saw a huge thing trying to get out of the hole in the ground. It was like a gigantic flame, and with every breath, a scorching heat spread through the air. There's something under the ground. Someone exclaimed. And in the control room, the energy meter must have reached an unprecedented peak, as if it was really a fire, or only the end of the world can magma have such a huge amount of energy. Ginyu looked at the hole curiously, wondering what was on his mind. Nabal was also shocked. Could it be the guy who fought against him before? But the hole must still be too small. The things inside struggled a few times, and the entire ground suddenly collapsed like an earthquake. Only a roar was heard, and an unprecedented behemoth came out. It turned out to be a fox with 9 tails. What is this? Ginyu asked a question, but whether he was asking someone else or himself. The blood vessels on Nabal's head were throbbing, and it was the first time he had seen such a huge amount of energy. The fox gasped, the air in his mouth seemed to be hot, the fur on his body was red, and his 9 tails kept shaking. Without swaying, the sky seemed to have changed its color. Asshole! The fox said. There was a strong murderous aura in his eyes, and its appearance not only brought shock, but also shivering fear, as if it was a god, ruling over all gods. Oh, you're not dead yet. Listening to the familiar voice, Nabal finally dared to confirm that this fox was the mysterious golden man from before. But he never imagined that he would be able to transform again. This ultimate posture is even more terrifying than his giant ape transformation. Juya snorted, and the ground trembled, smoke billowed, stones shattered, and he suddenly leapt into the air. Seeing that the situation was not good, Ginyu and Nabas hurriedly ducked, one facing east and the other west. But Juyi's momentum didn't stop like this. Instead he paused for a while in the air, and then turned to pounce on Nabal's position. Don't look at Juya's huge body now, but he is extremely flexible. Nabal felt a strong momentum, and when he turned his head, he saw a bloody mouth that was about to devour himself. With a bang, Juyi fell to the ground like a god, and the smoke that had not subsided before was raised again, making people unable to open their eyes. Captain Ginyu witnessed all this in the air, with only the word shock on his face. Facing the sudden appearance of the monster, he was not sure how the form in front of him would develop, but he vaguely felt that this thing seemed to be different. It wasn't for himself, but it had a great relationship with Nabal. Looking at the messy ground, Ginyu seemed to understand something. Juya angrily slapped the ground with his claws on the ground, causing waves of rubble. Juya now can't wait to grind this bald head that made him so embarrassed into flesh, and then burn it with fire. Not even the slag is left. But Nabal was someone whose potential was developed by Qin Yang after all, so how could he be crushed like this? A powerful chi suddenly gasped under Juya's claws, followed by a big explosion. And Juya is not a vegetarian, how could such an explosion make him regress now? Juya shouted and used all his strength, and slapped it down with one paw. But I didn't want this claw to stop suddenly, as if something hard was blocking it. I saw a wave of energy hit again, followed by another explosion. It turned out to be a large energy ball. Juyi was slightly restrained by this sudden explosion, so that he could not exert his own power. And just in such a breathing space, a luminous figure suddenly flew out from under the giant claws. Nabas gasped in the air, blood all over his head. He licked the blood that was dripping from his mouth and said, "This damned guy." Afterwards, he rushed towards Juya, who did not know the sky and the ground. The first-level powerful old punch hit Juya in the face, and Nabal's eyes seemed to be shining. To Juya's surprise, his huge figure was actually beaten by this tiny fist. Juya was even more angry. With a sweep of his tail, Nabal flew out like a fly. Then black energy gathered in Juya's mouth. In a short period of time, a huge black sphere was formed. Tail Beast Cannon. In an instant, the color changed innocently. All of them were fiery red, against the black light. The moment the black sphere was emitted, its aura was simply overwhelming. A huge explosion engulfed everything. The black shock wave destroys everything. Captain Ginyu witnessed everything in front of him and knew that this thing with 9 tails was the most troublesome thing. If Nabal was dealt with, how would he clean up the situation? Chapter 959_historical track. On Earth, another Big Bang was also happening. Due to the huge amount of energy, this dazzling light lasted for a while before it gradually subsided. Fortunately, the explosion was too violent, and Sun Wukong was blasted out by the shock wave, presumably without hurting his life. The little fat man Yakilobe had been hiding well in the corner, but he was helplessly affected by the explosion, and he flew out after him. When everything was calm, the ground seemed to have been roasted by fire, steaming continuously from afar, and it was impossible to tell whether it was smoke or what. On the other side, Gohan and Krillin stepped up their pace and rushed here in a hurry. Sun Wukong lay on the gravel, making a hoarse pain. Damn, he actually used this kind of attack on Hong Kong, alas, miscalculated. The vigor bomb tactics that had been painstakingly before fell short at the moment. Not only did not solve Vegeta, but it also disrupted the plan. It seemed that the balance of battle was tilted toward Vegeta again. Sun Wukong stood up with the next bit of strength. His body was trembling due to the severe pain in his muscles. He lowered his head and said angrily, "What should I do?" I don't know if he was asking himself or the gods in the sky. But now even the gods can't stop this giant ape Vegeta. The vitality bomb that was finally completed has disappeared again. Giant ape Vegeta jumped over and said triumphantly, "Humph. You are quite tenacious, you are already exhausted." In the distance, even though Qin Yang was disturbed by the shock wave, this did not make him take a step back. Instead, he looked at the giant ape more curiously, and Qin Yang only thought of mysterious energy at this time. His heart was itching, and he seemed to be very confident in his guess. But Qin Yang can't interfere now, otherwise the timeline will be disrupted, and the thoughts he spent before will have to be rewoven again. We must wait. Waiting for the opportunity to come, Qin Yang narrowed his eyes, as if an invisible hand was already controlling the fate of Sun Wukong and others. Sun Wukong was in the worst situation at this time. He half opened his eyes, as if he would fall down as soon as he relaxed, and he didn't know if he would fall into a drowsiness or just die. He blamed himself. It's over, I can't win at all, I just used up almost all my strength. The great ape Vegeta walked over at this time without haste. After all, everything was in his hands, and since he had been tortured enough before, he had to vent his anger. The giant ape made a babbling sound without taking a step. He raised his huge feet and moved towards the top of Sun Wukong's head. "Ha ha, how is it? It feels good." The giant ape Vegeta sneered and stepped on it with one foot. Sun Wukong still didn't give up, or it was his instinctive will to survive that made him jump backwards, which was considered to be dodging the huge foot, and then he gritted his teeth and tried to escape further. But these Vegeta are in the eyes, all he wants is to play. Seeing that Sun Wukong escaped a few steps, the giant ape Vegeta stretched out his palm and snapped again, sending Sun Wukong flying like a mosquito. Sun Wukong's body was completely out of his control. His body was hit against the stone wall, and the force broke the stone wall, and then he lay on the ground like mud. The giant ape Vegeta jumped over with a swipe, and Sun Wukong knew that the other party was coming again, but his body was completely disobedient. The giant ape Vegeta landed on both feet, just stepping on Sun Wukong's legs. With a click, Sun Wukong let out a scream, and now his legs were all shattered from his knees. On the other side of the sky, Kaylin felt that Sun Wukong's breath was getting weaker and weaker, and Gohan prayed in his heart to let his father hold on. But what's the use even if they come? Maybe it's finally a hope. Vegeta raised his foot, and Sun Wukong followed and screamed again. It was a scream of being ravaged. Sun Wukong covered his head, the pain made him very awake. And Vegeta didn't forget to taunt, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I accidentally stepped on your foot, hee hee." Great Ape Vegeta raised his index finger and said, "Okay, I'll accidentally step on your heart this time." And the purpose of his index finger is to use the chest cavity that runs through Sun Wukong. The Great Ape Vegeta roared happily, "Kakarot, your doomsday is here, even if you can be resurrected again, then the earth will no longer exist." Sun Wukong regained consciousness and struggled to say the last words, "Damn it. I did fail, but I didn't expect that the difference in strength between them was so great. I'm very happy to meet a master like you, but, that's it. I'm really unwilling to die." Right now, the giant ape Vegeta's fingers are only a person's height away from Sun Wukong's heart, and for this huge monster, this is simply close at hand. Ellipsis. Winds extreme, dream of love, 773,943,984. The extreme wind, Wanwa mirror, 874,542,149. Close black lens bracket. Death, Vegeta shouted excitedly. However, Sun Wukong suddenly struggled to raise his right hand, and a shock wave shot out from his palm. Vegeta, the giant ape, never imagined that the other party had this hand, or that Sun Wukong's will to survive surprised him. And that shock wave just hit Vegeta in the eye. Great Ape Vegeta roared, "Wow!" He covered his eyes. Sun Wukong smiled helplessly on the ground and said, "Animals will struggle before they die, but now I don't even have the strength to struggle." The Great Ape Vegeta calmed down despite the pain. He looked at Sun Wukong on the ground, and his right eye was already blind. "Damn, you bastard!" The giant ape Vegeta could not have imagined that he would be teased and even injured by this tiny guy at this time, and his anger made him lose his mind again. "Kakarot, you actually hurt my eye." He stretched out his huge palm, grabbed Sun Wukong on the ground, and held it up in front of him. "I'm going to make you into a patty." The Great Ape Vegeta laughed wildly, and as he exerted his strength, Sun Wukong let out a painful howl. The situation at hand has become more critical, but Qin Yang knows that Sun Wukong will not die like this, and now is not the time to take action on his own. Yakilobe, who had been hiding all the time, couldn't sit still, and wanted to help, but he didn't dare. Muttering in his mouth, "Oh, that guy is so cruel, if this goes on, Sun Wukong will be finished. Don't blame me for not helping him. I'm not his opponent at all, don't blame me." After saying that, he was ready to leave. The Great Ape Vegeta shouted excitedly. He was ready to exert his strength a little bit, and saw how long Sun Wukong could last. "Ah ha ha, you should die in pain." Sun Wukong let out an incomparable scream. When Yakilobe heard that he stopped, he was extremely hesitant. What should he do? And Qin Yang is also a little hesitant, or is this the time for him to take action? In this case, even if Sun Wukong is resurrected by him, he may be noticed by the higher-level people in the Dragon Ball world, right? Chapter 960-Anger. Captain Ginyu covered his eyes, as if it were all coming to an end. How could it be? Does it want to completely destroy this place? The earth was shaking, as if it had completely succumbed to some incomparably powerful force, perhaps not enough for the entire planet. Black flashes illuminated everything, blooming like flowers, but immediately decaying and overflowing with something red like blood. The world seemed to be reduced to ashes. Following a huge shadow appeared. Juya stood there. Nothing in front of him could surpass such a height. Humph, what Saiyans are just a bunch of scumbags. Anything will eventually turn to ashes in the face of such a huge force. And the planet that was originally a gorgeous scene, after this wave, only a few buildings collapsed one after another. But Juyi didn't relax, but stared at the flattened mountains and ground. In the endless smoke and dust, it seemed that something was about to come out. The participating fish opened their eyes, and the scene in front of them was completely detached from their cognition. Where did such a huge fighting force come from? They have never heard of a huge fox before, and the communication facilities have been completely destroyed. It means that it is impossible to contact their King Frieza. Is it really possible to continue to let this thing continue to do evil here? Go down. But before their minds could withdraw from this surprise, another startling scene followed. Someone pointed to the smoke and said loudly, "Have you seen it? Where is it? What is in the smoke?" Captain Ginyu got up from the ground. His protective suit was badly damaged, and it looked like he had experienced a fierce battle. He followed the words and reputation in that direction, which was the direction that Juya had just released the tailed beast cannon. "I saw a trace of golden light looming in the smoke and dust. And the thing behind the smoke seems to be moving, very fast." Suddenly, a spot of light flew up and jumped in front of Juyi, only to hear a bang. Such a huge fox fell down. Everyone's eyes widened. It was really a wave of unrest, and when they saw that golden light spot, it turned out to be a person, and those lights were emanating from him, and then carefully distinguish his appearance. How is it possible?" someone exclaimed. That person turned out to be Nabaz, and under such a dazzling light, that person turned out to be Nabaz. At this moment, Nabal's appearance has changed a little. His beard has turned golden for some reason, which looks a bit funny, but the power in him is real. I am afraid that even Frieza, who usually crushes everything, is not like this. A feeling of this has greatly exceeded their already blurred cognition. Where did Nabal come from? Just looking at it, he felt a sense of oppression, as if he had come to the edge of a cliff. But this oppressive feeling is not too annoying, but it is like being illuminated by the sun. Even if he knew the power of the sun, if he didn't wait for him to come, he couldn't get close to such a huge star, and even if he had the power to destroy the planet, he couldn't destroy the star. Nabal laughed wildly, looking at everything in front of him, and at the Nine-Tails who was knocked to the ground by his punch. Ha ha ha, I didn't think that you really had 2 strokes. If it hadn't been turned into this, I'm afraid I would have really turned to ashes just now. Juya was lying on the ground, his huge eyes glared at this tiny spot of light. It wasn't that he couldn't be beaten, but he was looking at this person. Juyi remembered Qin Yang's original arrangement. The first choice was obviously not him, and a wave of resentment ignited in his chest. Could it be that for himself, who has traversed such a world, in this Dragon Ball world, he even has such a building can't handle the little things? This is a humiliation. Today's Juya has just been promoted. Compared to being arrogant and underestimated by himself before, this was the source of his anger the most. This is the strong self-esteem of a soldier. He has always been the only one who can laugh wildly while standing on this group of trash. How can he break the rules here? Since anger is power, let this anger accompany you to truly turn everything in front of you into nothing. Juyi let out a long whistle, jumped up, and the hair on his body stood up. For the first time, Juya was so angry, like the one who absorbed another Nine-Tails by himself, as if he had just been released from the cage, and fought against everything around him with unwillingness. Juya is a master, not a fox, nor a monster, nor a pet. He is one of Qin Yang's most capable men. Except for Qin Yang, Juya has never put anyone in his eyes. Black energy gathers again. Juya is frantically refining the chakra on his body, and this energy is inexhaustible. For a guy who carries such energy, even if it is consumed, it will consume the other party to death. Oh, this is the trick again. Nabal is fully prepared, and now he has risen more than 1 grade in terms of strength and speed. Just like iron and steel, even if the elements are similar, they are completely 2 products. Tail Beast Cannon, a wide-ranging explosive move. Even if its power is amazing, its destructive power is still first class, but now Nabal can easily dodge if he wants to. According to Juya, the more compressed the huge energy ball, the smaller it is, but the change in volume does not mean that the power is weakened, but the energy released after being compressed has increased several times. As Juya's eyes changed, the black ball shot out. Coming. Nabal smiled and put one hand in front of him. Even Captain Nukwe was shocked by this move, saying, "This guy Nabal, does he want to take it head-on? Impossible, he is seeking his own death." Nabal laughed wildly and said, "Just let you see the true strength of this uncle." The tailed beast cannon rose rapidly, and Nabal didn't seem to have the slightest intention to dodge. When his palm came into contact with this pure energy body, Nabal's hand was not damaged in any way, but in an instant, the black energy bomb stopped. What's even more incredible is that this thing didn't even explode. With blue veins bursting out on Nabal's head, he shouted loudly. He even held this thing firmly in the palm of his hand. But the next move was really shocking. Nabal actually lifted the black ball and put on a throwing posture. What does he want to do? Not to bounce this thing back. The miscellaneous fish were terrified and witnessed this scene in front of them. If this is true, their little lives are on the line. Run, this guy is crazy. Faced with such a situation, even Captain Ginyu had to take the lead in leaving. With a loud shout, Nabal threw the black ball down.